Welcome. Sorry for starting a few minutes late to the special meeting of the Board of Trustees for the Peralta Community College District. It is 1:10 and we are officially calling this meeting to order. Let's go ahead and do our Pledge of Allegiance. Vice President Quinlan, would you lead us, please? Thank you very much. Let's move to roll call, please.
Trustee Withrow. Here. Is it on?
Here.
There you go, sir. Trustee Johannes.
Here.
Trustee Gonzalez Ewan.
Right here. Thank you.
Trustee Napolia Villareese.
Here.
Trustee Quinlan.
Here.
Trustee Delphine Polk.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Great, thank you very much. 1.4, approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
Move approval.
Second. Thank you. Roll call.
Just to confirm, that was Vice President Quinlan and Trustee Reese. As the first and second?
No, Gonzalez, Yuan, Nikki.
Oh,
and then-
my apologies. Thank you, ma'am. Student Trustee Hogan.
Yes.
Student Trustee Latino.
Yes.
Trustee Withrow.
Aye.
Trustee Johannes.
Yes.
Trustee Gonzalez Ewan.
Yes.
Trustee Napolia Villareese.
Yes,
Trustee Quinlan.
Yes.
Trustee Delphine Polk.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Let's move to 1.5, public communication. Do we have any speakers signed up for today? Okay, thank you very much. So we will move to 2.1, interview candidates for provisional appointment for the trustee area 2 vacancy. Consider approval of provisional appointment. Did you want to start, Chancellor? Did you want to say a few words?
Yes, I wanted to thank the candidates. I've already introduced them to the process that we're going to be following today. I've asked them to abide by the board's directive, which is to have no cell phones, no communication. And the board will also follow that policy or that directive. And that the president will conduct the meeting so that there will be some consistency between the candidates in the process. So we have our first candidate here who's waiting to be called forward by the president. And then we will randomly select the next candidate so that there will be fairness. And then once the candidate is introduced and completes the 30 minutes, then they will be asked to step away from the boardroom so that there's all due consideration for the order in which they were interviewed.
And Trustee Reese, you have a question?
sorry, Chancellor, just for clarification, I know that we weren't going to have this visible on YouTube, but it is accessible on Zoom, right? And I think one of the reasons why we didn't want to have it accessible during the interviews is to ensure that each candidate was coming into it fresh and didn't have an advantage. So how did we decide to do that, or did we decide to do that?
I'm sorry. I would ask Natasha, our external legal counsel.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions before we move forward?
And just an aside, our clock is not working, so with the assistance of our legal counsel, we will be giving notification to the candidates, which I've already told them about, so that they aren't looking up at the clock, but we will give them the 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and 1 minute. So we will be keeping track of the time.
Nikki?
Thank you, Madam President. Point of personal privilege. I just want to give a shout out to our award-winning citizen journalists and faculty advisor who are in the house tonight, and thank you and welcome. We did incorporate a couple of the questions that the citizen put forward in the body of questions that we're asking. And so thank you for your participation and your presence and always keeping us honest.
And then Natasha, you wanted to make a few remarks about the questions we're going to ask.
Sorry, let me quickly restate that. Trustees, the ad hoc committee met to develop questions for the candidates, and they did consider the questions provided by members of the public. Those questions, a copy of those questions are before you. While there were some optional questions, it is the recommendation of the president that we move forward with the 5 established questions. The time intended for each interview is 30 minutes. The intention is to stay strictly with those 30 minutes so that it is fair for each candidate to have the same amount of time. We have provided the president with a script so that she will be able to read each of the questions for the candidate, and we will provide a copy of the questions on the dais for the candidate to be able to follow along as well. And then, as the chancellor said, we will help the candidate with the keeping of time. And again, the intention is to keep those questions and the answers within that 30-minute period. Any questions from the trustees about that process?
I know that Vice President Quinlan, you said you preferred one question.
So I would like to put 6 in place of 5.
Sure. So trustees, if you could take a moment to please review the questions and determine if you have a concurrence on revising question number 5 with question number 6 in the set of questions that's before you.
I have no objection. Okay, great. So we're going to be asking questions 6 and 7.
We will need just, if we have a collective concurrence on that, we will need just a moment to reprint the questions for the candidate. So do we have, if you could just show me by a thumbs up that I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so Sasha, if you could assist me in just reprinting the questions, replacing question number 5 with question number 6. And trustees, if you could just give us a few moments and then we'll be ready to begin.
Yeah, and then Trustee Reese.
Natasha, also, so if we are being very strict with the time, no clarifying questions at all, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Additionally, I might just point out, if the board did want to start, we provided all of the candidates with the first 2 questions, and those have not changed. So we could get started, and then we could provide the revised pages as Sasha prints them out. And we could ask the candidate to come forward.
I would be okay with that.
Okay, all right.
And are we gonna close the boardroom? No? No, okay.
We're just asking
Just
members of
checking.
the, I'm just reminding the members of the public, no recording, no text messaging, no Instagram, no nothing. Just because we want to have a fair process and not unduly influence the candidates that are coming after our first candidate. It is a public open meeting. We're just asking you not to use your devices.
So just to clarify, we've got the candidates segregated, they're sequestered, they're with each other. They're basically policing each other. So I don't see a particular reason not to have members of the public have access to the world, social media, et cetera. It's the candidates that we're trying to keep from being biased, or
Trustee Ewing, and that was a recommendation that came out, was that it would be what we're asking the candidates to do would be mirrored by members of the board as well as members of the public that were here.
and
So
I'm
we're
just
following
suggesting
through with
that I don't think we actually have the authority to ask members of the public not to use their devices. And so I don't want to be put in the position where we're policing people with rules that are neither constitutional nor make sense for what we're trying to accomplish, which is to keep the candidates sequestered. So I don't want to get in a big fight about it, but it strikes me that, okay,
Yeah, you're right, Trustee Gonzalez, and we won't be prohibiting anyone from having their device. Yeah, it's on. We haven't taken devices or asked anyone for their devices. We're just asking for the support, voluntary support in helping to ensure the process can go forward in that way. Thank you.
So I have a few remarks here. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the special board meeting of the Peralta Board to interview candidates for provisional appointment to Trustee Area 2. Following the election of Trustee Kevin Jenkins to the Oakland City Council, his seat in Trustee Area 2 became vacant. At our board meeting on January 24th, 2023, the Peralta Board took action to fill this vacancy with a provisional appointment and began the process by inviting members of the public to apply to fill the vacancy. All eligible residents residing in Trustee Area 2 were welcome to apply for trustee by February 9th, 2023. Any person 18 years of age or older, a citizen of the state, a resident of Trustee Area 2, a registered voter, and who is not disqualified by the Constitution or laws of the state from holding a civil office is considered eligible to be appointed to the position. The district was fortunate to receive approximately 15 qualified applications from residents of Trustee Area 2. The board's ad hoc committee met and reviewed applications on February 13th, 2023, and prepared a recommendation for the board. At the February 14th board meeting, the board approved the ad hoc committee's recommendation and selected 4 candidates to interview with the board. At today's board meeting, we will interview the 4 selected candidates and consider possible action to appoint today or at the meeting on February 28th. We've already finalized our questions, so let's go ahead and begin. And our first candidate is Adrian Abuyan.
Hello, good afternoon.
Thank you.
Do I have an opening statement present?
We are going to go straight to the questions.
Great, okay.
So question number 1, what drives your interest in this position and what experiences with our local communities have prepared you to represent the public interest? Following that, how do you envision your career as a trustee evolving, and what are you prepared to invest of your time and energies, and for how long? This question was provided in advance.
Thank you, trustees, and everyone in the room this afternoon for having me. Goes without being said that it's an honor to be just interviewed for this position alone, and so I appreciate the time. What drives my interest in interviewing for this position is the ability to positively impact the experience of all students and future students when it comes to their education and opportunity to change their lives and the legacy of their families. How I envision my role as a trustee evolving is that although this is an appointed seat, I hope to run for the elected piece in the coming election, because to me, it is an honor to be considered for the appointment, but another honor to make sure that I have the elected faith and trust of the community that I seek to represent. A large goal of mine is to learn how to collaboratively work with my fellow Board of Trustees, because I'd be only one of but 7 trustees, and how we collaborate with one another to represent the needs of our students, our staff, and our faculty in our community. And what I've prepared to invest my time is as much time as needed in order to address any challenges or issues that may come up, any celebrations right? Or challenges we have in the community to make sure we can serve with faith and utmost regard to the population that we seek to serve. And in talks of preparation, as you know, I was a student myself at Peralta, and I was at College of Alameda as my home campus, but I took class at Laney and Merritt College too. I also visited Berkeley City College because I was one of the associate students of College of Alameda. And while there, we worked on issues that affected not just the College of Alameda, but all 4 of our campuses. How we did that is we acknowledged and found and understood that the challenges we saw and faced at the College of Alameda wasn't just unique to that particular campus, but in fact, it was spread throughout other colleges. And so we're able to collaborate with one another to get to know our faculty, to get to know our staff, to say, hey, these are issues not just in terms of Wi-Fi and reliability, but also facilities, right? Which I understand is an issue today. In addition to that, after being on the Associate Students of College of Alameda, I ran for the Board of Trustees as a student trustee representative. When we got there, the students from all 4 campuses decided that we wanted to form a body called the Peralta Student Council. And we thought this is a great opportunity to have a seat at the table, if there wasn't one already, right? But to engage with issues that affect us on the student-wide campus, to have representation, not just only at the campuses, but on the Board of Trustees, not just as a formal position, but as a place to engage and really get into the weeds of the issues that we're facing. Some of those have to do with even public safety, right? Those blue towers you would see in the parking lots weren't active and they weren't operational. We would test them to say, what if someone's in trouble, right? How do we make sure we can communicate outside of our silos, right? And how do we join forces, understanding that there are competing interests, but there are also competing opportunities that exist at each campus, but what are the ones that are common to all of us at our campuses? After that, I transferred to UC Berkeley, where we also activated students. I majored in legal studies there, but we activated a club called the Cal ACLU, a chapter based at the campus itself. And at that time, a certain president was elected and we had speakers coming to our campus. So we organized about 100 students to speak out or express the desire or not desire of the students to have these particular speakers come to campus, but also to have speakers that we felt embodied the values of our student body. After that, I went to Washington, D.C. to work with Senator Dianne Feinstein as a legislative intern, and my portfolio focused on 2 primary issues. It was about health and education. Health being in the concerns of maternal mortality rates in California, and in education about college success rates as it pertains to unhoused population and also food insecurity. And so for me, I bring this back into my work and I jumped into work in public affairs for a firm located right in Jack London called Gray, Greer, Shelby, and Vaughn. There I learned a lot about partnerships and activating communities who are historically underrepresented and don't necessarily understand the amount of resources that are available in the community. We did this by hosting events like at the Coliseum and Arena, right? And activating churches in the local area and gave away about 3,000 pairs of shoes in partnership with First Five, right? And also Safe Kids to say, how do we have safety education around it, even installing car seats? I realized that an event like that, I was learning a lot more about public-private partnerships and how they can actually reap something that benefits a community. I realized that that shoe giveaway event had roots in a church located right in our community on 37th Telegraph. It's actually First African Methodist Episcopal Church that just experienced a fire. And they started that event with giving away 100 pairs of shoes. But I realized after partnering with them and the 5 unions presented at Coliseum with the staff members and ASM Global who staffed that facility there, is that the roots of this need to be honored, right? And we need to acknowledge that we may take an idea and help it grow, but we need to make sure that we also address the root causes that cause a need for education around car seats and shoes. So I went to that church and I understood that we need to partner more when it came to other projects. After that, I kind of missed the direct impact we had around student organizing. And so I was offered an opportunity to go to Meals on Wheels in the East Bay. It's actually called SOS Meals on Wheels. And we serve the senior population in San Lorenzo, San Leandro, Hayward, Castro Valley, and Oakland. And for me, I see you looking at the time there. I also wanted to make sure that we could understand a population that also reaps the benefits from places like community colleges, from jobs that were reliable, from education that didn't just require you to get an AA to transfer or an associate's degree, but also certified technical education. This is the type of education my family alone has benefited from too, as my father's a machinist, and he doesn't have a degree and my mother doesn't either. But I knew that it meant a lot more than just what I understood because I didn't understand education at all, right? I didn't know what financial aid was. And I walked into a student center kind of a deer in the headlights, wondering what I do next. I filled out CCC apply, now what? And for BD Navigated process, my goal is to make sure I bring a student-centered focus to a board, which I know is there, but I have the experience to make sure that's represented in an equitable manner.
Thank you. Question number 2 focuses on fiscal challenges. This is a 3-part question. Please explain your understanding of the top 3 fiscal challenges facing the district and what role you would play as a member of the Board of Trustees in addressing these challenges. Second, please address your understanding of the financial structure of California community college systems, as well as the specifics of Peralta's financial position, and please include how your professional and personal experiences, if any, have helped you prepare for this significant trustee responsibility.
You know, this is an interesting one. When I was a student on district committees here, we were on the budget allocation model. We talked about enrollment. We talked about district technology. And one thing that was a challenge even then when I was a student beginning in 2013 was understanding how enrollment works and how it operates and why there was discussions around borrowing from different semesters, et cetera, to make up for a deficit or a delta that exists, right? Even after I left Peralta, I realized that the number one challenge I even saw today was declining enrollment, right? But this isn't unique to Peralta. In fact, this is prevalent across 116 community colleges that exist in California itself, right? Around a 5 to 6 kind of year period, we've seen about a 4% reduction in our enrollment here, right? And for me, it's to say, how do we understand how we're doing outreach or retention efforts on the campuses? How do we go about dual enrollment as we look at the populations based in the updated annual budget that was presented for the 2022-2023 year? We saw that the bulk of the funding comes from enrollment. So how do we look at those particular buckets and pursue them, right? And then I understood more about the student-centered funding formula, right? When we get to that piece, we understand that there has to be incentives. There has to be tools that are provided for not just the district, but at each of our campuses, and how we evaluate what success means for each student, right? Does that mean getting some CTE credits? Does that mean getting AA's degree to transfer or a loan? And understanding different buckets there. One thing that I was so encouraged to see is that we're going, hopefully soon, changing from a budget allocation model to a resource allocation model, and incentivizing our colleges to use their savings and give them time period in which they can use that savings in the coming year. And I hope to see that soon. Another piece is, this exists even when I was at the campuses too, but in this year until 2025, of course, we have the hold harmless funding. We have almost a total of $136 million in revenue. We know when hold harmless sunsets that there will be a delta that we have to make up. And my curiosity and my research shows me that we need to also implement these efforts across the board in terms of our strategic enrollment plan. How do we activate every single actor we have at the Peralta colleges, right? How do we really lean into participatory governments, including students, right? Faculty and staff, and the expertise that the 6 of you at this board have yourselves, right? You have business experience, you have political science experience, you have policy experience. Individuals have machine technology experience on this board here. And to me, when I see that, it's so encouraging to see how we utilize them. But I also want to understand more, if I have time for questions later, is about some of the outcomes that are coming from the retreat you all had on January 10th and how we work with one another. Because some of those pieces also related to the 2019 FICMAT report, and the grand jury report reading is how we work with one another, right? And for me, that was modeled when I was a student, and I see it even today. How do we understand our differences and our similarities? And in our similarities, how do we work to collaborate with one another in order to overcome this fiscal cliff that might exist, right? How are we activating all the expertise we have in the Peralta colleges at each of our colleges, right? To prepare and imbue our team with the skills and training they need in order to overcome this. The second one is there are some structural internal processes that I believe need to be in place or continually improved to empower our 4 colleges to equip and educate students, right? That's our primary goal. But of course, in the Board of Trustees, by Ed Code, our responsibility is to hire and to evaluate our chancellor, right? Our top administrator, and also be a fiscal agent, a fiduciary of the public funds that come through here. And so we have proper governance. When I look at that report, when I was outside of Peralta in the professional workforce, it was difficult to read through, but I understand that we are a people-based organization, right? And so there are going to be discrepancies. There's going to be difficulties with working with one another, but I hope to learn even more about how to activate those relationships and now have with one another, but also in the community, how we work with our fellow elected officials and offices, and perhaps even have something like a holding piece in the Life Enrichment Committee in Oakland, right? The third one I see is primarily in our infrastructure, meaning our facilities. You know, we have dated facilities that exist. I've read about graffiti being present, non-operational bathrooms, cold classrooms I heard about at the February 14th meeting. How do we make sure that we practice care for all of our actors, right? And that's in how we structure our spaces, right? How do we invest dollars and also go to the public? I believe since the Child Development Center at Merritt College has come to place, we will almost equal about $1.16 billion invested from public dollars. And so how do we demonstrate that we are good fiduciaries and responsible stewards of those dollars? And through our facilities, how do we communicate modernized classrooms so we can be competitive with the top 10 colleges in the Bay Area? I believe we are competitive, but how do we make sure we have a proper balance of using in-class learning and distance learning right together? So we can also be able to equip individuals who are looking for a non-traditional way of attaining higher education. The other piece is that how do we activate individuals who are AB 540 students, right? Those individuals receiving Pell Grant, right? Or College Promise students. That was me, right? I was working 35 hours, coming to school, didn't know I can get financial aid. At that time, it was the Board of Governors fee waiver, right? And I didn't know. At that time, $46 a unit was really expensive to me. And so I didn't know I could get that covered. So I didn't have to work the jobs I'm working or all of the hours I was working to make sure I can help my family and also make sure I can pursue my higher education. If it wasn't for programs like that, like EOPS, et cetera, I wouldn't have been able to be here today in front of you. And so the other piece is I want to know more about how we're pursuing student success in terms of activating students so that they know about financial aid. There's very few people who I would talk to say, hey, have you ever gone to EOPS? And they knew what it was about, right? So how do we equip our personnel or hire more personnel to make sure that we actually utilize the resources that are available to our students, the state of California? It's always been a fascinating model as I understand districts in terms of how they oversee college funds and how funds come through a district and they're allocated or apportioned correctly based off FTES. And I was curious about how we also understand the relation between, we also calculate FTEF, right? Or do we have the proper balance? Do we have the proper balance of funds, of personnel? Are we handling issues at the district when it comes to the approval of projects? Do we have the proper systems in place to make sure that those projects are taken care of in a timely fashion? Because at the end of the day, it really does affect students. But we're going to think about we call it the College Alameda family, but we think about the Peralta family, the way we treat all of our actors, the way we invest dollars or get to the issues or challenges they're facing in a timely manner speaks value to the community that we hope show up at our colleges. So that's a piece there.
Thank you. And thank you, Natasha, for the time check. Question number 3 focuses on enrollment, communication, and community. Please describe any professional or personal experience in education, communications, marketing, partnerships, community development, or other relevant areas you have had that have prepared you to support innovative strategies as the district seeks to build its student enrollment.
Yes. This is a personal and professional piece is that I believe anytime you go about a problem, you have to understand the end user, right? We all know that as UX design or human-centered design, right? And for me, it comes through narrative, being proximate to the journey of the people we hope fill our classrooms and come to meetings like this. I would not have thought it possible to be a student leader in the Associated Students because I thought when I got to college, I was in the big leagues coming to a junior college, right? A community college. And I thought I need to put my head down and do the work. I didn't realize that there are benefits that flow from being part of an active student life and campus life at my college. I felt more plugged in and served and connected than I had ever felt at an institution when it came to academia. And for me, that really helped me come back. It allowed me to ask questions that that were outside the purview that I thought belonged to me, with me just getting good grades or passing a test, that my education had a deeper meaning. So for me, I see these questions here, and part of what I like to add to them is saying, how do I understand Area 2 in terms of being a trustee on the board, right? I live in East Oakland, like the other candidates do too. My family has rented all their lives in the Bay Area, right? And we understand what it means to be in flux. But if Peralta could be that place where we understand how we organize individuals, like in my neighborhood, we do trash cleanups, right? We make sure we look out for one another. We reach out and have a relationship with one another so we can activate individuals when they're in help, when they're in need. Another piece is understanding how policy actually reaches the people that we're trying to touch, right? Although we're responsible for passing board policy that will hopefully result in equity and access and student success, I think when we structure such things, we have to be in touch with the community we're trying to reach, right? So how do we do that even outside of Peralta? Are we attending our community events? Are we understanding the local and regional workforce needs that exist in the Bay Area and the East Bay? Do we have diverse programming that reflects that? Do we go door knocking and help people understand that they can make an incredible living by pursuing a trade, right? How do we have grassroots boots on the ground, right? Outreach. And for me, that takes a lot of place in the work I've had, right? Whether it be on a campaign and understanding marketing needs and understanding the way that humans go about assigning logic to the feelings that they have around how we structure society. The other piece is that my nonprofit experience I have at Meals on Wheels, right? I ran a department of around 160 volunteers who came through on a monthly basis, right? And to me, that activity individuals all over the East Bay and in San Francisco who would come over and serve when there's a surplus at the Meals on Wheels over there, right? And said, how is it I organize all these individuals to just do something simple, deliver food to the front door of seniors who want to live with a dignified independence, right? To meet a need that exists in the community that perhaps can't be met by their own, so that we can empower them to remain independent, right? But for me, it was understanding more about how we not only recruit volunteers, but how we retain them. How are we training and equipping them and mentoring them when they have questions, right? About how to do a distance delivery when bringing meals to their front door. How do we also reward them in a sense, acknowledge them, right? And make them part of this community. So when it comes to maybe raising money, there's a deeper sense of connection, right? Because there is a development department at Meals on Wheels, right? We may get money from our local county government, but we also subsidize that with donations. So for me, it's understanding how we reach community. I did the same thing as a student. When people ask me how I got people to turn out for a poll in high numbers were considered like 1,500 to 2,000 responses here at Peralta when Associate Vice Chancellor Adela Esquivel-Swinson was still here. But we did that by going to the classroom. We didn't rely on a Peralta email that perhaps they check if they get their financial award. We went to them. We met them where they were, right? And we activated there. We played games like softball, et cetera, with faculty and staff to make sure that we knew we can go to one another to build these bridges, right? And for me, it's understanding how we reach students and using our expertise to do that. Another piece is working for Gray, Greer, Shelby, and Vaughn. We oftentimes had to understand the way we go about finding diverse supply chains, right? We did that by going to have our conversations in person, over a meal, breaking bread, right? And it speaks a lot more value than people understand when you're right in front of them, having the conversation about what might affect their future and how their business can actually help community and not worry just about their bottom line, right? And so when I had that experience, I understood that coming to Peralta, even after graduating here, I had an importance to also train individuals. So I'd come back when asked to help train the associate students at both campuses that I was part of, Merritt and College Alameda, and also the district, the Peralta Student Council. When student trustees came through, the last one I helped train was Dave Ivan Cruz. He used to sit right there. And so for me, I said, how do we kind of connect this whole piece of a community activation, organization, and also participation?
I just want to note, thank you. Want to note really quickly, we have 10 more minutes left in our interview. Okay. And we have 2 more questions. So
Sure.
let's go ahead and get to the next one. Question number 4, the role of the trustee. Please describe any administrative or
Excuse
supervisory.
me, Madam
Yes.
President.
Yes.
Would it be possible to read the narrative
Oh, sure.
so that the question is put into the context of
I can.
what it's meant? Thank you.
So narrative, the Board of Trustees plays a policy and oversight role and does not engage in implementation or operations. We set policy and establish goals, and the one employee who reports to us, the Chancellor, is in charge of those responsibilities. Nonetheless, a deep understanding of the challenges administrators face can be very helpful in carrying out our oversight role. A, please describe any administrative or supervisory experiences that have prepared you for this oversight role, especially experiences that called for you to make difficult decisions from a position of authority. And after describing your relevant experiences, please share your philosophy of management. What is your philosophy of governance? Given the board's responsibility to support the Chancellor, how do you see your role to implement checks and balances?
Thank you. When it comes to administrative or supervisory experiences, I had to manage the volunteer department at Meals on Wheels, right? And to ensure that we had tons of volunteers, but volunteers who are also there almost every day, right? We had staff also in the volunteer department who would prepare trainings, et cetera, and outreach efforts, right? So we activated different civic groups like Rotary, Lions Club, Kiwanis, et cetera, right? And so we have that piece there. We had to make decisions around budget, but also who we hire and how many people we actually retain, while also maintaining a livable wage, right? The other piece of oversight I've had is, especially in the campaign I just came from, I know my resume is available for the public to see and you've seen it. But in a campaign, we know it's fast moving and we have to make decisions quite quickly, right? And so it means bringing on people with a limited budget, right? We all know that campaigns can be tiresome. They're never an 8-hour day. They're always 12 to 15-hour days, 7 days a week, right? In making those decisions, we have to make sure we activate our team, right? So I wasn't just the campaign director, I had a campaign manager, et cetera, right? And so utilizing our team to make sure we can not only analyze a challenge in front of us or be nimble and adapt to a messaging piece or strategy, but also trusting that they have the expertise and that knowing that they'll come to me when they need help and checking in with them. For my piece is also, you talked about your philosophy of management. So I believe in an empowerment model. When I come to management or even leadership, right? I think about how I was trained and how I operate. I believe in servant leadership and understanding that from a base of leadership, you're not governing from top down in some sense, right? You have to understand the intricacy that goes into work you're asking individuals in your team and appreciate the work that goes in there, right? Only then from a place of servanthood, you can really understand how we actually show up and serve the community, right? In terms of governance, there's a very defined, clear lane when it comes to Ed Code for the Board of Trustees. We don't get into management only with the Chancellor, right? And for me, it's saying accountability looks like checking in with our top leader. And right now that happens to be the interim Chancellor, of course, Dr. Jackson. When we hopefully recruit a full-time permanent Chancellor, is making sure that we understand our board mission and goals and how they're being articulated when it comes to administrative procedures. And checking in to ensure that we understand how they're being implemented captures the vision and the spirit of which the board policy has been passed. That is our mechanism of accountability, right? But it's also through the public, because we are responsible to the public when it comes to local tax dollars. Our fiscal responsibility also is to students in a sense, because the way we allocate dollars or choose them really predicts about how their experience will be in the classroom, whether it be virtual or in person. So my role, I know I checked in for number C already too, is also making sure that we use our checks and balances. Since I've been here, I believe with interim and permanent, we've been through about 5 to 6 chancellors. The first chancellor was here was Dr. Ortiz. And then from then, a whole slew of individuals have come in. And so I'm confident there has been good things, but also been challenges. The challenges are preeminent in our district, right? We talk about fiscal challenges, but also making sure we can collaborate as a board. And for me, when it comes to leadership, I believe leadership involves a lot of listening. How do we listen to one another? How do we understand the priorities and what people care about? And how do we embody that in the way we pass policy or even seek to structure it? Are we checking in with every single participant that exists in a participatory governance model? Do we understand what our staff needs, what our faculty needs, what our administrative team members need? Is that coming through the chancellor themselves? Are they articulating in a way that allows us to be actionable? about what we might do as a Board of Trustees. I think that's it.
Thank you. And then our last question, per state law and board policy, the Peralta Community College District is required to engage in a process of participatory governance. Please explain your understanding of what this means and what you believe the board should do to solicit engagement from the PCCD community and also demonstrate accountability to your voting constituents. What, in your view, is the value of deep inclusion in decision-making, and when does this become problematic? Provide an example of a time in a previous role that illustrates both the opportunities and the challenges inherent in this kind of inclusion-based decision-making, while also demonstrating your basic approach. Explain what you did and how you handled the situation. And last piece, how would you balance the need for inclusive decision-making, the challenges of varying and conflicting points of view, and interests of different constituent groups, and the need for accountability?
This is a loaded question. So in terms of soliciting engagement from the PCCD community and also demonstrating accountability to our voting constituents, I'm always going to bring up a student forward approach, right? That's who I am and that's what I embody, right? But there are several actors. There are many stakeholders, 2 minutes I see, and we have to activate them all. So that means bringing teeth to it, right? We flowed the idea as students when I used to be in the classroom was about making sure that if you're showing up committees like at the district, every one of those individuals are compensated individuals except for those students. How do we incentivize individuals who don't have an ability to show up and also make a living so they can maintain their GPA, et cetera, right? How do we make sure we include them? Does it look like exploring models we haven't seen before? I'll get to the example of how it illustrates both the opportunities and challenges. At Meals on Wheels, when I got there, they handled volunteers on paper. The walls look like paper mache, right? About 160 volunteers. Then they got a spreadsheet. And I said, where is your CRM? I said, we don't have one, but we want you to bring one on, right? And that's a 55-year-old organization. We have people working there 17 years. So to me, I had to use what I learned from Dr. Luis Escobar, Student Life and Campus Activities Director at College Alameda. And when I learned about the Cotter's theory of change. How do we identify early adopters? How do we understand the fears of individuals who are afraid of technology coming in? And how do we bring them into the fold so they become confident and they want to succeed? Because most people want to make sure they do a good job and serve a mission if you're somewhere like at Meals on Wheels. So I worked with each of the individuals. The challenges were that it took a lot of time. It took a lot of effort and there was a resistance to it. But when we worked at it and demonstrated that we are committed to the process and we kept walking through it, with every single person who would interact with the VRM, people adopted it and they did well. It was with difficulty and it took a lot of hours. I was a salaried individual, it wasn't overtime. And so I was committed to do that, but the challenges were worth it. It involved so many people and the way we leveled up and actually served our community just transformed in a matter of a couple months. The last one is the need for inclusive, we're at our time, aren't we?
Looks like we're there on time.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you taking the time to engage with me. Hope to see you soon. And Mark, will you let us know, do we have to stick around for the rest of this? Okay, got it. Well, I will. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Alvarado. Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Alvarado. Thank you so much for being here with us. The process is going to be that the trustees have 5 questions for you. Those questions should be in front of you. The first 2 were provided to you in advance of the meeting today. The president will introduce each question for you and we'll begin a 30-minute timer. In the moment of that timer, at 15 minutes, I'll give you a notice that you have 15 minutes left, and then 10, then 5, then 3, then 1. And so we'll just look to you to manage your time.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. So the first question, which you have already received, what drives your interest in this position and what experiences with our local communities have prepared you to represent the public interest? How do you envision your career as a trustee evolving, and what are you prepared to invest of your time and energies, and for how long?
Cool, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Alvarado. I apologize if I'm facing my back towards you. I'm here, standing here in front of the podium. Yeah, my name is Daniel. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a proud Oakland native and resident my entire life. I'm part of, I went to school in the OUSD system. I went to preschool in Eastmont. I went to Markham. I went to Frick. I went to Castlemont, and also I went to Laney College, and I'm a proud alumni of Laney College. If I could, I would have received my bachelor's degree from Laney, but obviously it only awards up to associate's degrees. But I would definitely get my bachelor's there if I had the chance. Yeah, so I am a first generation college student, first generation professional, low income, and from the enrollment data, we have a majority of those students at that category, and I know how difficult it is to take your first semester in school. I know the disparities with that, and I'm a huge champion for student success programs. So in my start of my professional career, I worked for a nonprofit called Hack the Hood. There, I helped low-income youth of color gain tech skills. And I know also the tech disparities as well. I was preparing students on how to break into tech. And I taught them how to build websites for small local businesses, and also awarding them a free laptop with a stipend. And I know how important it is to get access to technology. And I myself broke into tech, and I know how it is to be the only minority in the conference room at those places. And I've have 3 tech companies under my belt that I worked for. And I can tell you that the tech industry is not diverse, but I'm here to help change that. And going to question A, how do you envision your career as a trustee evolving? It varies. I know the job as a trustee is always ever changing. There's competing priorities every day. I know the time commitment that it takes. I know there's board meetings twice a month, also special meetings, emergency meetings. And I know if as a trustee, I know I would be provided an email, and that email is used to collect messages from the public. So I'm always eager to listen to what my constituents say, their concerns or ideas. And for 1B, what are you prepared to invest your time and energies, and for how long? So I received my bachelor's degree from Cal State East Bay in marketing, and I am very keen on marketing. So I've worked marketing jobs, so I would love to help with strategic management enrollment. So when I was a student at Laney, I visited President Tamil when she was president of Laney at the time, and just to do an informational interview, like, oh, what did you do to get this position? Things like that. And I mentioned to her that, oh, I know about marketing, and she was like, oh, we're always looking for ways on how to increase engagement with the community through marketing. And one time too, I came to this office to talk with the finance department, but I was like, oh, the chancellor is here, like this district. So I was like, I just want to introduce the chancellor at the time during 2019, I believe. And I also mentioned to him at the time, like, hey, I do marketing. And he was like, oh, we're always looking for marketing work. So definitely will love to provide that skill set to the district. And also, I would also like to focus on student success. So once we get them enrolled, how can we retain them? When I was a student, I didn't know the possible opportunities that were available to me, such as the bus pass, the tutoring, the other success programs. So it was very not communicated well to existing students, and it wasn't really marketed well of the opportunities available to current students. So I would definitely want to spend my time and energies on that. And yeah, that's yeah. Well, let's close that off for question one.
Okay, thank you. Question number 2 focuses on fiscal challenges. This question was also provided to you. This is a 3-part question. Please explain your understanding of the top 3 fiscal challenges facing the district and what role you would play as a member of the Board of Trustees in addressing these challenges. Please address your understanding of the financial structure of California Community College System, as well as the specifics of Peralta's financial position. And please include how your professional and personal experiences, if any, have helped prepare you for this significant trustee responsibility.
Sure. Yeah, so the number one, well, and these are not in particular order. I am aware that these are the top 3, but I want to start off with the top 3 fiscal challenges right now is the miscalculation of budgets. So I know the student-centered funding formula, that's pretty new. And I know there was a miscalculation on that this past semester's budget meeting, and it was off. The budget was off by around 11 million, and it wasn't like a cut to our funding. It was more like we overestimated it, and given that was a new formula, I would address it to include change management procedures, because our external environment, we're not in control of that. So we have to be on our toes to see how we can mitigate that change, and also risk management, because we definitely do not want to overestimate any money that we have, or even underestimate any money that we have. So we always have to be keen to that, and also check in with our budget committees to triple check if we made those calculations right, because I don't want for us to we already projected the budget for the year, and then we have to go back and update it. I don't want to do that, because that will increase overhead and time will be lost. So definitely do not want to do that. And then the second top fiscal challenge is enrollment. So given our enrollment numbers for the past few years, I've seen enrollment go down. That's really a key issue, because most of our funding comes from the student-centered funding formula, and it's unrestricted funds. And that, 80 to 90% of that, we do that to fund our day-to-day operations, which will be salaries and benefits of personnel. So we definitely want to increase enrollment in order to combat that, because we foresee a deficit in the year 2026 to 2027. And I know that may not sound like a long time from now, but time passes by really quickly. So we want to make sure we increase our enrollment for that. And also finding ways to combat that, finding ways to market to new students or current students, so we can make ourselves favorable as a good institution for students to come to learn. So that's the second fiscal challenge. The third fiscal challenge is increasing expenditures. So I'm seeing that increasing of expenditures, almost outpacing our revenue growth. So we want to find ways on how to automate our processes, how we can lower our overhead, but also keeping in mind how can we put students first so they won't be directly impacted? Are there ways we can lower our liabilities. How can we do that as opposed to cutting classes or cutting instructors? We don't want to do that because that directly impacts our students, and based on our values, of student success, we want to keep that in mind if we ever decide to downsize our expenditures. And then for 2B, yeah, please address your understanding of the financial structure. Yes, so I mentioned this a little bit earlier. So the California Community College System is comprised of over 100 community college districts, and they're the ones who came up with the student-centered formula. So it's broken down by 3 categories. So 70% of that is enrollment, 20% is demographics, and 10% is outcomes. And they are our funding force for the Peralta system. So we want to make sure we comply with that because that is unrestricted funds, and that gives us liberty on how to fund our district. And for specifics for Peralta's financial position, right now it's what I mean when I say green is that we are not, our bottom line is green, so we have everything funded. We've received a lot of one-time funding due to the pandemic. We were getting bonds, we're getting more legislation support, but we want to be cautious of that because given that's one-time funding, we don't want to rely on that. We want to make sure to focus on enrollment because that is our base of sustainable funding. And then for 2C, so I went to Laney College and I went there to get my associate's degree in business. So down the street at Laney, I took my accounting classes there. So I'm well experienced in both managerial accounting and financial accounting, and passed all of my exams and passed all of my classes there. And so I know the framework on the importance of auditing, internal controls, external controls. I know how to read balance sheets due to the training I received at Laney College from my instructors. And I also have my bachelor's degree in business as well. So I also took economic classes, statistics classes. So I'm very well understood of mathematical equations and bookkeeping. So, what categories to look for. So I know how to do that. And most importantly, ethics. So in all of those financial classes, they always had a chapter on ethics. So making sure you make ethical decisions. In this case, with any decision we make, how will this benefit students? So always keeping that in mind. And also I used to work for Hack the Hood, a nonprofit of $2 million in reserves. And if you have that type of working in a nonprofit that's 501c3, you're required to do annual reports to the public. So my job was always to submit all receipts of expenditures that my center had and submitted them to the director of finance. Because if you can't provide receipts for your expenditures, then you will run the risk of losing your funding. So we definitely don't want to do that here or anywhere else. And also I was in charge of the corporate card. So making sure that, I say, what I'm going to spend and when. So always keeping track of bookkeeping that way. And also making sure that we fulfill the funding criteria of our funders. So we receive grants from the government, other philanthropic places. So we always have to read each criteria that is required of us. So we need to have 100 students for this semester. I would have to market to the community like, hey, come join this class, but also making sure that we hit our mark there. So always data driven on that aspect. So making sure that we hit our goals of that criteria that each funding sources mandates us. And that's end of for my question 2.
Thank you. Question number 3 focuses on enrollment, communication, and community. Please describe any professional or personal experiences in education, communications, marketing, partnerships, community development, or other relevant areas you have had that have prepared you to support innovative strategies as the district seeks to build its student enrollment.
Cool. Let me read this again on my own. Give me a second. Thank you. Cool, I'm ready. Yeah, so it all comes down when I first started my career at Hack the Hood. So we were an early stage nonprofit in Oakland. So not a lot of people knew about Hack the Hood. So my job was to create flyers, do social media campaigns, and go into online community forums, and finding free ways on how to promote our program, and also going to career fairs at the Oakland Library. So finding ways what we could do for free to promote things like that. And I also was a student at Laney at the time, so I always asked permission from my instructors, like, hey, can I do a presentation on how to promote Hack the Hood in your classes? And furthermore, professionally, I used to work for Autodesk, Dolby Laboratories, and now at New Relic. And the theme of my jobs there was always revolving around social media. So how can we promote people, our educational courses? How can we go to different community forums? And also partnering with external stakeholders. So, having those open doors open when we do, promotional things. For example, if I promote in a, next door, when I was promoting at Hack the Hood, keeping relationships open, like, hey, if you know any people that are interested, let them know even in the future. So I definitely love to do that. And I have a marketing degree, so I know the structure on how to create marketing campaigns and also being data driven. I'm also well versed in Google Analytics. I always like to refresh my Google Analytics page to see how much engagement we had per day. So I'm always data driven on that. And I also like to report on impact. So number of impressions, number of clicks, number of how much time people spent on your website. So I definitely love to use that to increase student enrollment. And the way to do that right now, as I see it, the district markets on a mass scale and it's not really personalized. So if I can provide personalized ways on how to promote, such as each degree program, like our cybersecurity program, I definitely can help with that and see the numbers skyrocket. Because typically when you personalize your marketing campaigns, they tend to get more conversions that way as opposed to mass scaling. That's it for question 3.
Okay, thank you very much. We're moving on to question 4, and I'll read the narrative. And the Board of Trustees plays a policy and oversight role and does not engage in implementation or operations. We set policy and establish goals, and the one employee who reports to us, the Chancellor, is in charge of those responsibilities. Nonetheless, a deep understanding of the challenges administrators face can be very helpful in carrying out our oversight role. This is a 3-part question. A, please describe any administrative or supervisory experiences that have prepared you for this oversight role, especially experiences that have called for you to make difficult decisions from a position of authority. B, and after describing your relevant experiences, please share your philosophy of management. What is your philosophy of governance? C, given the board's responsibility to support the chancellor, how do you see your role to implement checks and balances?
Sure. Yes, for 4A. So when I was at Hack the Hood, I moved up to lead instructor and I had to manage 2 people. It was my first time being a manager. And also I had to adhere to making sure that we fulfill our grant criteria. So always having, self-accountability and self-governance. So it was always hard. It was always hard to make difficult decisions that weren't popular. But you always go based on, how you can have good decision-making frameworks. So if it's putting students first, going from that decision-making, make your process more easier. But given that we live in a not in a infinite world, we live in a finite world. So how can we utilize the resources that we have? Because this world is not unlimited, so we have to find ways on how we could do more with less. but yes, it's always hard to, because, they're unpopular decisions, but how can you always keep the public interest at heart? And so for 4B, after describing your relevant experiences, yeah, so my philosophy of management is diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I've always been a huge advocate for that. So it's not always about like doing the work, but getting to know your teammates. I always like to do team building activities. So for example, when I was a first-time manager at Hacktahood, before doing the work, I took my team out to dinner to get to know them. What are their values? What do they like to do outside of work? I'm very personable in that manner. And my philosophy of governance, it always goes down to the mission and values of the organization that I work for, or the nonprofit that I work at, or company I work at. So the work that I do aligns with that mission statement. So I know at Peralta, the mission statement, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, social justice, and that aligns with my personal values. And also ethics. So I know how to not put myself in situations that would be a risk. So I know how to do the right thing as always. And also this is a public position. So I know I represent the community that I grew up in. So I want to make sure I make the right decision for the public interest at heart. And then given the board's responsibility to support the chancellor, how do you see your role to implement checks and balances? Yes, so I know one of the key action items for the current board right now, there's an onboarding journey that I saw. So we'll definitely love to take advantage of that and see how the board operates. And in that regard, that will help me see what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. And how does the voting power exactly work, and also keeping on track of like existing laws such as the Brown Act, to make sure everything is public when we do presentations like these, for example, and also ethics as well. But yes, it will always be around on existing laws that exist today, and then previewing that as a framework on how to do checks and balances, such as the Brown Act. So yes, it's really important to do checks and balances because we want to make sure that we're doing the right decisions, and also making sure that we're on track to move the district forward. And yeah, I know we could provide ideas, do voting power, but we also have to see what's realistic as well.
Thank you. So this is the last question. Per state law and board policy, the Peralta Community College District is required to engage in a process of participatory governance. This is a 4-part question. Please explain your understanding of what this means and what you believe the board should do to solicit engagement from the PCCD community and also demonstrate accountability to your voting constituents. B, what in your view is the value of deep inclusion in decision-making and when does this become problematic? C, provide an example of a time in a previous role that illustrates both the opportunities and the challenges inherent in this kind inclusion-based decision-making while also demonstrating your basic approach. Explain what you did and how you handled the situation. E, how would you balance the need for inclusive decision-making, the challenges of varying and conflicting points of view, and interest from different constituent groups, and the need for accountability?
Yes, for 5A. So this is really important to loop in our student council. For example, each college has like a student president, treasury, and things like that. It's always good to ask them to keep, include them into the loop of anything that we want to do in terms of engagement wise. And also inviting partners that we collaborate with as well, because I know the district is really heavy on partnerships. When I mean heavy, I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean it more like we have an extensive partnership inventory. So it's always good to loop them in on any decision making that we're doing, including them in the process. And also how to demonstrate accountability to your voting constituents. It's always good to be accessible to them. So in this age, it will be through email. I already know the trustees' emails are posted 24/7 on the website, and I'm always available to hear their concerns, ideas, how can we implement them, how can I include an agenda item for them, things like that. And that'll be great to increase engagement that way. And then for 5B, so the value of deep inclusion in decision making. So that's really key because we have an enormous stakeholder environment, and it's always good to include them into the process. So I remember when I was at Autodesk, we had a decision making training, and we found that if we include too many people as decision owners, it can be problematic. It will delay a lot of decisions. It'll take a lot of time. So it's always good to have one representative from each department per se, or from each partnership, so we could condense the decision-making process. Because if we have too many decision owners, then that could waste a lot of time. So it's always good to get one representative from each department or partnership. And then for 5B, provide an example of a time of previous. So in this case, for 5C, so for 5C, it's always good to include people in the process, key people. So for example, when I was at Adobe Laboratories, I was facilitating a steering committee for our support platform, and it's a 3,000 plus company, and there's around like 20 people in the steering committee, and I felt like it wasn't needed to include a whole lot of people in there. So to base my decision on who needed to be there was mostly like how your level of engagement is with this initiative. But in this case, in a government sense, in a public sense, this will impact lives. So we can't really use that framework. But in this case, it's always good to include people from your constituency, and also hearing their concerns, and also inviting them here to speak. And then for 5D, so for 5D, again, it goes back to our key action items for the year. And for top of line is student success. So we always want to make sure that we include, being student obsessed with our decision making, and going off of that protocol. And I know there's conflicting points of view and interests. It's always good to see like what are the benefits and pros and cons of each decision that we make, and then base our decision on the higher outcomes that we do. It's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be really easy tasks to do, but we always have to outweigh make data-driven decisions. So hearing out surveys, hearing what they say via email, and also inviting them to speak. But we also have to be realistic of their concerns, because again, we operate on a limited resource capacity. So how can we do more with less? And that's it.
Okay, thank you very much.
So thank you. So thank you everyone for your time. Just leave it.
Madam President, can we take a 2-minute stand and stretch break here?
We're taking a 2-minute break.
Thank you. Thank you for suggesting this.
Thank you, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with our next candidate.
For my height. We're
Thank
just
you, Natasha.
missing one trustee. Should I be? We'll just wait for a moment.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Ms. Gonzalez Brito. Thank you for joining the board for this candidate interview. The interview will last 30 minutes. I will provide you an indication at 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, and 1 minute. There are 5 questions that the trustees will ask, that the president will ask of you. The first 2 have been provided to you in advance, and the 3 remaining questions are printed in on the dais for your review. The president will walk you through each of the 5 questions. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. So our first question is, what drives your interest in this position and what experiences with our local communities have prepared you to represent the public interest? How do you envision your career as a trustee evolving? And what are you prepared to invest of your time and energies and for how long?
Thank you for inviting me to be here today and for the opportunity to address you all. I currently work as the CEO of the California Reinvestment Coalition. I manage a $2.5 million budget. I oversee 16 staff and I work with a board of directors. Our organization represents over 300 community organizations across the state of California who work with low-income communities and communities of color, and particularly community and economic development. I've been there for over 9 years, and I've learned to make tough decisions, manage differences, and build consensus amongst different parties. I want to say that although I may not always agree with colleagues, I'm always reflective and thoughtful about the way that I engage. And I've learned that throughout my process, throughout my time as a CEO at the California Reinvestment Coalition. In my time there, I've had to make tough budget decisions, build common cause, make strategic decisions based on stakeholder input, and I've conducted 2 strategic plans and implemented them, including stakeholder outreach, external and internal scans, and building consensus. My work there is focused on closing the racial wealth gap through corporate and public policy to ensure that financial institutions are investing back into local communities and affordable housing and small business and economic development. Although I've worked for a long time to close the racial wealth gap, I've learned over that time that to succeed, we need more than economic development. We need education and to invest in education. Community colleges are an entry point for young people who don't fit the 4-year university mold, don't have the resources or access to a 4-year university, and workers who want to shift or advance their careers. All of this ultimately leads to increasing incomes, and that's the first step in closing the racial wealth gap. I'm also a proud Peralta parent. My son is a student at Berkeley City College, where he's in the multimedia arts program. He did not fit the 4-year university mold. He's on the autism spectrum and has learning challenges. And he is thriving at Berkeley City College and very excited to be there in that program. I would be honored to be able to work to ensure that Peralta is strong for other young people like my son and others who wish to take advantage of the education provided here. In terms of my role as a trustee and how I envision my role evolving, first of all, I want to say I would dedicate myself to learning and relationship building. I have much to learn, but I'm a quick learner. To be honest, I'm a lifelong learner. There's always somebody that with expertise, experience, knowledge that you don't have, and that is something that I would be dedicated to always being open to and actually seeking out. Secondly, relationship building is key. Nothing happens without relationships. From the administration and leadership at Peralta to the different stakeholders, students, faculty, classified employees, to the larger community that benefits from our existence. Secondly, I would focus in terms of that evolution. The duties of our trustee are fiduciary, policymaking, and most important, selecting a new chancellor and supporting that chancellor's success. My efforts would be focused in these areas. And when am I prepared to invest in terms of time and energy and for how long? I would see being a trustee of the Peralta system as a full-time job. I have a full-time job, but this is a second full-time job, and I have to be determined and dedicated to be able to provide that kind of service. I am prepared to serve as a Peralta trustee as long as the voters will have me. I know that it takes time to really learn and to really be able to participate fully, and it takes dedication. So I'm prepared to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Question number 2 focuses on fiscal challenges. This was also provided to you. This is a 3-part question. Please explain your understanding of the top 3 fiscal challenges facing the district and what role you would play as a member of the Board of Trustees in addressing these challenges. B, please address your understanding of the financial structure of California Community College system, as well as the specifics of Peralta's financial position. And C, please include how your professional and personal experiences, if any, have helped prepare you for the significant trustee responsibility.
Yeah, thank you. So the 3 areas that I would focus on, I really would start with enrollment. The enrollment drop off from what I've been able to determine is at 17% since 2017. Peralta is currently in a hold harmless period, meaning the district gets a general apportionment from the state for its 2018-2019 enrollment numbers. And this is scheduled to end, as you all know, in 2024-2025, which presents a financial challenge for the district. I believe the Peralta is currently getting $6.8 million that would end with without the hold harmless. And so this is a financial challenge. I think it's really important as a trustee to be able to focus the budget on increasing the enrollment at Peralta to be able to really avoid this financial challenge. Secondly, fiscal responsibility. The fiscal risk analysis that was conducted by FCMAT, and I have to commend the board and the chancellor for asking for FCMAT to be conducted at the Peralta colleges. They provided really important recommendations to the district. And but it included things like audit findings that have been repeating over time, audit timelines, deficiencies in internal controls, the need for stability and leadership to gain financial stability, and the need for an annual financial risk analysis. Not only did you invite FCMAT in, but you have implemented the recommendation 68 out of the 78, which has really led to financial stability within the district, as well as being able to get full accreditation again for the 4 colleges. So congratulations on that. I do want to say, as I looked at the audits, it looked like there was a number of repeat findings from 2020 to 2021 to 2022. I think I said that right. But they have been, what I saw also was that 7 of the repeat findings were resolved in the most current audit, which is really extraordinary and showing that we're headed in the right direction. There was one material finding related to federal awards and compliance and non-compliance, which I think would be really important to address if it hasn't been addressed already, because it can affect the granting of federal awards. So fiscal responsibility would be the other area. I think that's a top fiscal challenge for Peralta, and it's made great strides. And there's much more work to do, which as a trustee, I would really focus on. The third is OPEB, $150 million in bonds. The district is on the hook for paying those bonds, as well as the debt service, as well as the health insurance for the pre-2004 hires. The challenge, as far as I can understand, is there's a balloon payment at the 30-year mark of those bonds. From what I can understand of the bonds, they are performing. They're allowing the district to pay for the health insurance as well as the debt service, but this balloon payment is really a challenge for the district. So I think in terms of this fiscal challenge, really paying a higher amount of the debt service, I think the district has already started to do that, which is really important, and working with the investment firm ahead of time to be able to reissue or refinance the bonds if necessary. I would also say that being able to pay that the higher amount of debt service requires stable revenue. And so it comes back to enrollment and getting those enrollment numbers back up. I think I said 3, so I'll stop there.
Thank you. We'll go on to question number 3. This question focuses on enrollment, communication, and community. Please describe any professional or personal experiences in education, communications, marketing, partnerships, community development, or other relevant areas you have had that have prepared you to support innovative strategies as the district seeks to build its student enrollment.
So I've worked my whole life in community and economic development and building partnerships with community organizations and impacted people at the community level. It really is a process that requires coalition building, it requires consensus building, and it requires hard work. And so I really do believe that my experience now, more than 30 years, I'll age myself in doing that work, has prepared me to be a Peralta trustee member. I think it's really imperative that we understand that as a community member, you really get a different perspective than being outside versus being inside a district or a governing body. And I'm not an insider. I don't come from Peralta, but I come from the community that we represent in Area 2 specifically, where there is a high need for community economic development, for closing that racial wealth gap, and a real, not only a high need, but a real opportunity to bring students from that area into the district. I am a proud member of that area. I really am committed to seeing new students come in from the areas that Area 2 area. And I also think that community partnerships are extremely important. Partnerships with K-12 education, partnerships with community organizations, with community and economic development organizations that can provide students and really make the partnership work in terms of enrollment numbers, as well as then closing that racial wealth gap and getting incomes up.
Thank you. Question number 4 is the role of the trustee. And I will read a bit of a narrative. The Board of Trustees plays a policy and oversight role and does not engage in implementation or operations. We set policy and establish goals, and the one employee who reports to us, the chancellor, is in charge of those responsibilities. Nonetheless, a deep understanding of the challenges administrators face can be very helpful in carrying out our oversight role. This is a 3-part question. So A, please describe any administrative or supervisory experiences that have prepared you for this oversight role, especially experiences that called for you to make difficult decisions from a position of authority. B, and after describing your relevant experiences, please share your philosophy of management. What is your philosophy of governance? C, given the board's responsibility to support the chancellor, how do you see your role to implement checks and balances?
Thank you. That's a great question. So as I mentioned, I'm currently the CEO of the California Reinvestment Coalition, and I manage 16 staff. When I started there, I became the CEO after the founder, which meant the founder had a lot of ways in which he did things, but they didn't build the infrastructure of the organization. We had the same audit company for 10 years, and you should be able to change your audit company periodically to be able to get different eyes on. We did not have a CFO. I hired a CFO. We did not have an operations manager. I hired an operations manager. And then I work with the board to provide training on financials for the board, which is their fiduciary responsibility is ultimately the most important for the organization, which is true here too for the district. In terms of difficult decisions, prior to my time as the CEO of the California Reinvestment Coalition, I was the executive director of a different nonprofit. As the CEO, as the executive director, you have to make tough decisions all the time, whether you're hiring somebody or you're letting somebody go because it didn't work out. I've had to do that. It's very difficult, but it is something that it's a tough decision that has to be made at times. Other tough decisions include budgetary decisions. Do we give raises? Do we not give raises? Do we have to make cuts? And all of these are decisions that I've had to make over my tenure as the CEO of a nonprofit organization. And so along with budget cuts, hiring and firing, strategic plans. We've had to, as I mentioned earlier, I've put together 2 strategic plans along with staff and board members and constituents, and to be able to then whittle down tons of information, as well as everybody has a different priority, to be able to come down to 5 to 10 priorities for the organization, and be able to then build consensus around that, because you want to make sure that people feel included, that they're being heard, and that at the same time you can't do everything and you can't be everything to everybody. So having to make those decisions as well. In terms of management philosophy and governance, I have learned a lot as a CEO of an organization. It does not work to, the other thing I did, by the way, was there was no structure within the organization before. There was just the CEO and no supervisors. And so the CEO supervised everybody. That doesn't work well. So I built the structure within the organization to be able to make sure that there was a structure that worked, as well as a structure that provided for different people to take different leadership roles and different responsibilities. And I think in governance and governance particularly, it's really important that that leadership is shared, that it doesn't lie within just one person. The Board of Trustees provides information, policies, and procedures to the chancellor. The chancellor also works with different shared governance committees, the Budget and Planning Council, the Participatory Governance Council, and there's different ways for different constituents to take responsibility within the district. So my philosophy is really one in which there is a shared leadership where everybody brings knowledge and expertise and can contribute in some way to the success of the organization. It's also really important as CEO I mean, ultimately, you are the boss, right? You are the boss and you have ultimate responsibility for the success or the failure of that organization. But you can't do it alone. And I also have a board of directors. The chancellor say earlier, she has 7 bosses. I have 7. I have actually 8 bosses. And it's something that I've learned to, as the CEO, you may be ultimately responsible, but you can't do it without the board of directors. You need their support. You need their advice, you need their direction, and then ultimately they're responsible to their constituents in their areas. And so being able to have that knowledge, expertise that each trustee brings, but also the areas that they represent and the distinct needs for those areas. The last question around checks and balances. I think the trustees and in my case, my board of directors ultimately have to be able to provide their fiduciary responsibility of the organization. There has to be tight internal controls. They have to know that the CFO and the development director, in the case of my organization, have 2 distinct roles and they can't overlap or we're going to end up in some problems with our audit. I will say that it's extremely important that there be legal advice as well, that we not have a situation where when I first started as a young executive director, I was Googling answers to HR questions. I learned very quickly that's not the way to do things. You're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble. You need to have good legal counsel to be able to provide you sound advice and be able to help direct the ways in which we do business. I will say one more thing. I can't remember if it was this question or the question before. I have been in charge of audits for my organization, several audits at this point, and we have had clean audits. And I'm very excited to be able to say that today because it's extremely important in a nonprofit for fundraising, but also in terms of keeping the organization fiduciarily doing well. And so I have a familiarity with audits and a familiarity with findings and how to ensure that we're making changes that are needed in order to change any findings that might be found with the audit. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're moving on to question 5. Per state law and board policy, the Peralta Community College District is required to engage in a process of participatory governance. It's a 4-part question. A, please explain your understanding of what this means and what you believe the board should do to solicit engagement from the PCCD community and also demonstrate accountability to your voting constituents. B, what in your view is the value of deep inclusion in decision-making and when does this become problematic? C, provide an example of a time in a previous role that illustrates both the opportunities and the challenges inherent to this kind of inclusion-based decision-making, and while demonstrating your basic approach. Explain what you did and how you handled the situation. E, how would you balance the need for inclusive decision-making, the challenges of varying and conflicting points of view, and interests of different constituent groups, and the need for accountability?
Can you repeat the last question?
Of
I
course.
was trying to write it down.
E, yes. How would you balance the need for inclusive decision-making, the challenges of varying and conflicting points of view, and interest of different constituent groups, and the need for accountability?
Great, thank you. Yeah, I was trying to find them and then it was harder to find them than just to write it down, but I appreciate it. Thank you. So in terms of participatory governance and the PCCD community, I've done a lot of my own research in terms of the participatory governance model at the district, been able to learn more about the Planning and Budget Council, as well as the Participatory Governance Council and the different committees under that, including enrollment, technology, and others. And to really have a broad base of participants in those committees and in those councils. So having the chancellor there as well as top leadership, having in case of finance, the vice chancellor of finance there to be able to provide insight in terms of the details of the financial situation that Peralta finds itself in. Classified. So I understand under AB 1725, it really addresses the academic senate and having faculty at the table. I'm really proud that Peralta has not just faculty, but has classified employees, students, at the table as well. And this is extremely important in terms of, thank you, in terms of having a successful participatory governance structure. The value of deep inclusion in decision-making and when is it problematic? In terms of the value, like I said earlier, there's not one person that knows everything, or even a body of governing body that where, although we have different expertise and different experience, all knowledge is not held within that body. And so really being deliberate about bringing in knowledge and expertise from other sources, in this case, having the Participatory Governance Council and other committees really participate in providing recommendations and advice is extremely important. When it can become problematic, I'll give you an example from my experience. So as the CEO of an organization, we have a wellness committee. And that wellness committee is responsible. Well, they actually form themselves, and they're responsible for providing input and insight into how the organization can best support employees and make changes if necessary to our policies and procedures. We revamped the handbook together, actually, with the wellness committee. I was really proud of that as well. When it can become really difficult, I don't know if problematic is the right word, but is when there's a change that needs to be, or that is proposed by a council or committee. In this case, it was the wellness committee, and you disagree, or leadership disagrees, or it's just not financially possible to be able to implement that. So you really have to, I think the best way forward in that case is open communication, to be able to speak with the committee, the council members, and be able to explain why you're making a decision that you're making. And like I said at the very beginning of my comments, I may have differences in opinion, but it's always being reflective about why I'm making a decision I'm making. And being able to articulate that to a constituent body and be able to hear and listen to any concerns that they have, because we may be making a decision contrary to what that body or that person believes, but it doesn't mean that we have to shut down and stop listening. There's concerns. Well, maybe there's other ways to address those concerns. In terms of opportunity and challenges and participatory governance, I'm not sure what else I would add, except that I would say that I think it's really impressive, the participatory governance structure that the district has put in. I think as part of a strategic plan, it would be really important to evaluate how it's worked, what has worked, what hasn't worked, and then be able to set out some new goals and constantly not just wait for the time of a strategic plan, but constantly evaluate how the participatory governance structure is working, and what can change to make it work better. Balance of inclusive decision-making with different constituents. I think in that case, you're going to have, and as a trustee, you're going to have different people with different opinions coming to you, trying to influence your decision. And ultimately, you have to make an independent, thoughtful, reflective decision. And you have to be able to represent your constituents first and foremost. And you have, at the same time, you have to be able to listen to the constituents of Peralta, and then ultimately make the best decision that you can. And so it's, that's a balance that has to be held by trustees. You can't do everything that everybody wants. And you have to, you're going to have to make tough decisions. You're going to have to tell people, and I would take that, that approach, that if I am going to make a decision that's contrary to what you think should happen, I have no problem saying that to you and telling you why. It's really important that, again, that communication stay open, and then I'm not hidden in some place that people can't reach me and they don't understand why I'm making decisions and the way that I'm making them. So I think I'll stop there. Was that the last question?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
questions.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ms. Khalil. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for being here with the Peralta Board. This interview process is going to take 30 minutes. There will be 5 questions asked of you by the board president. The first 2 questions were prepared and provided to you in advance, and the remaining 3 questions are also printed and should be in front of you. Do you have a copy of the questions there?
Yes, thank you.
Terrific, thank you. So the president will walk you through each of the 5 questions. And at the 15-minute mark, I will show a sign just to let you know that it's 15 minutes. And then I'll do the same at 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, and 1 minute. And so with that, we will begin. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, question number 1. What drives your interest in this position and what experiences with our local communities have prepared you to represent the public interest? What do you envision your career as how do you envision your career as a trustee evolving? And what are you prepared to invest of your time and energies and for how long?
Thank you for your question, President Polk. I'd like to start by first thanking the board, Ms. Jackson, Ms. Natasha, Mr. Mark, and Ms. Sasha for coordinating and having me here today. I am currently a community school manager with Oakland Unified School District, and I work every day towards the success and uplifting of our students of Oakland, California. I'm a big advocate of community colleges, and I know a lot of my students now will end up at the Peralta Community College system. In my past that have, I'm sorry, I'm just going to find the question on the paper so I know what to go back to. So that drives my interest in this position. And the experiences I have had in my community have been plenty. Most recently, I was a board member for the YWCA of the Bay Area, where our entire mission was to empower women of color, women and people of color. I'm currently a member of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for the National Association of Social Workers, primarily for the California chapter. In 2018, Oakland awarded me as a local hero for the work that I did in the community, how many families I fed and housed during that year. In 2020, I was a nominee for the Care Warrior Award for the care I took for the students in my community and uplifting their success. I was also a keynote speaker for My Red Shoes, which is an organization that clothes East Bay students. And I've most recently co-founded the Arab American Student Achievement Initiative at Oakland Unified School District to make sure all populations that are marginalized have initiatives to uplift their success. The next part of that question was, how do I envision my career as a trustee? I envision it continuously growing. I envision a lot of learning and flexibility, a lot of commitment and passion to the students of the East Bay. And I hope it evolves to higher degrees on the Board of Trustees as I continue to grow and learn in my role. And what am I prepared to invest? I've had past board experiences, and currently I'm a committee member on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And I know that you must be committed and dedicated to invest time, energy, mental stability, and your mental space and energy, and I'm committed to do that for the uplifting of our students of East Bay, to help bring equity and to help bring equity to the students of the East Bay. And for how long? For however long it takes to do the work and bring success. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to question number 2, focuses on fiscal challenges. This is a 3-part question. A, please explain your understanding of the top 3 fiscal challenges facing the district and what role you would play as a member of the Board of Trustees in addressing these challenges. B, please address your understanding of the financial structure of California Community College System, as well as the specifics of Peralta's financial position. And C, please include how your professional and personal experiences, if any, have helped prepare you for this significant trustee responsibility.
Thank you. The 3 top fiscal challenges that I understand that the Peralta Community College District is facing currently, as are many districts, whether community colleges, regular colleges, 4-year colleges, school districts, is low enrollment. That's one of the biggest things that are hitting a lot of districts. Another thing that the Peralta Community College District is facing is the new state funding formula that will shift the way we get money to our community colleges, which the formula is based on a different formula that it was before, which will affect all budgets and the way we spend the money. And the third top thing that I believe the PCCC is challenged with is the deficit spending, because the budgets are so not balanced, which occurs when budgets are off, right? And since enrollment funds are not coming in as they were in past years, but expenses and costs are continuously rising, there's a challenge there for the fiscal responsibility of Peralta Community Colleges. The role I would play along with my cohort would be to make sure that first, make sure that the PCC financial area is prepped for this new funding system. Because this new funding system will take effect, it will change the way things are done. And so we need to create a process and procedures for all involved to be able to work within that new funding system. And please address your understanding. So the understanding I have of the California Community College financial structure, the new one that's coming out, is that there's a new formula which is blended differently than it was before. The current formula will have I believe it was 70% based on the enrollment of students, 20 and 10, and then students' financial needs was going to be 20% of that financial system, and then 10% would be student success as well as degree completion. And this the system has been put in place to help close racial equity and income gaps in our community, which, as we know, is high. And as well as the specifics of Peralta's financial position. Well, for Peralta, I know currently, because of Peralta's lack of progress around fiscal balancing and budgeting, as of 2020, January 2020, we've been placed on probation by the ACCJC. So I'm aware of that financial position that we're in, and I am hopeful that we can move out of that. And please include. I just got into my current role 2 years ago and just became responsible for budgeting a department budget, which is different than my past roles. And it's very different than what you guys get. I get $270,000, which is gone in a blink of an eye. So working with $1 million budgets must look differently than that. And I want to learn and continue growing in that aspect. So these past 2 years, learning, going to weekly question and answer budget forums that the district puts on for us, going to manager meetings. I just had an hour meeting today with 2 managers to understand how we can carry over funds, which Measure G1 funds can be carried over, et cetera. So there's so much learning to do. And these past 2 years have been a learning process for me, and I'm looking forward to learning more about it and growing in that aspect.
Thank you. We will now go on to question 3, which focuses on enrollment, communication, and community. Please describe any professional or personal experiences in education, communications, marketing, partnerships, community development, or other relevant areas you have had that have prepared you to support innovative strategies as the district seeks to build its student enrollment.
So I did say to you, I was the community school manager of a school in Oakland, California. And what that role entitles me to do is manage the partnerships the school has with outside partners, such as mental health partners, after school program partners, Alameda Food Bank is a big partner, and so on and so forth. So, and I'm also a big advocate. That's a little bit of professional personal experiences. I'm a huge advocate of the community college systems throughout my life. I want to say 20 years ago, I wanted to get a good paying job while I was going to school. So I went to Malcolm X Community College in Chicago and got certified in pharmacy tech. And then I wanted to learn how to save money. So I went back to that community college and took 3 classes in financial stability. And then I came to California, where I enrolled in Diablo College so I can get certified as a librarian technician. And then I wanted to buy a house, so I went to Laney College and I took several real estate courses. So I never wanted to be someone who didn't know what someone else was talking about in a room. As well as I audited some language classes at Laney College, so I'm able to better assist my students and my student families in knowing that these classes were available to them. And my next Laney College experience will be, I will be signing up for a ceramics class next semester. I just emailed the professor. They are offering night classes now, so I'm really excited to do that. As well as 3 of my nephews are registered at the Peralta Community College system. One of them is at Berkeley, one of them is at Berkeley City College, and 2 of them are at Laney. One of them is doing the culinary arts program, so I'm really excited about that. In my role as a board member for the Society of American Mosaic Artists, I was the financial director and membership director. And my first year as financial director, I raised over $35,000 in donations from organizations as well as private people. I continue to work with partners, like I mentioned before in my role now, and my community development. We work very hard at developing community in our schools, and our school is one of the community schools of Oakland. So that's a really big initiative for myself personally as the community school manager, as well as Oakland. And so we also are going through enrollment issues at Oakland Unified School District. And so we're working towards marketing our programs at school, our events, our family engagement, our parties, our courses, our electives, to show families that, come enroll at our school. So we're working towards that marketing. We just did a marketing video interviewing the principal at the school and some students walking around to show families of Oakland that our school is a diverse and equitable space for their students. And my interest in this, the uplifting and advancement for marginalized communities has always been an initiative close to my heart. And I think all my experiences, whether professional or personal, have moved me towards this. And I've been committed to this work my entire career and would love to have the opportunity to continue that. Here, thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to question 4, which is the role of a trustee. The Board of Trustees plays a policy and oversight. This is a narrative. The Board of Trustees plays a policy and oversight goal and does not engage in implementation or operations. We set policy and establish goals, and the one employee who reports to us, the chancellor, is in charge of those responsibilities. Nonetheless, a deep understanding of the challenges administrators face can be very helpful in carrying out our oversight role. It's a 3-part question. A, please describe any administrative or supervisory experiences that have prepared you for this oversight role, especially experiences that called for you to make difficult decisions from a position of authority. B, and after describing your relevant experience, please share your philosophy of management. What is your philosophy of governance? And C, given the board's responsibility to support the chancellor, how do you see your role to implement checks and balances?
Thank you. I'm so sorry. I feel like I'm repeating myself because a lot of these questions, but please describe any administrative or supervisor experience that have prepared you for this oversight role. So as I mentioned before, I, for 4 years, was on the Society of American Mosaic Artists Board, and we had a lot of financial challenges. And I remember one year we had to cut courses. One year we had to cut the amount of hotel rooms we got for our conference leaders. We were always trying to figure out how to create success for our members within the budget that we had. So a lot of that experience has prepared me to look at a budget and try to fit in what we need into what we have. I just informed you guys that for the past 2 years, I've been in this role where I am now in charge of a budget. And so I've been learning a lot. I go to, like I said, go to weekly budget Q&As that the district holds for us, just to learn about different types of funding, which I didn't know about 2 years ago. There's all these different measures that we have, and they could only be used for specific items, or if you want to supply, it has to be in this item line. And so these are a lot of the learning curve that I've spent the last 2 years trying to learn to understand and be familiar with. We did a lot of financial discussions at the YWCA. We were never challenged with our budgets there, so I didn't get any challenging how to figure out experience there. However, with the SAMA board and my own personal department budget this year, I've learned how to make those difficult decisions. Do we hire a teacher to give students art, or do we buy more supplies so students have supplies? And these questions are so hard because you want them to have both things, right? You want them to have the education, but you also want them to have supplies, right? So these are the decisions that at my position, as difficult as they are, we need to get the data, find out what's the best for students, to align the programs to what the demands are or what the parents want for their kids. Let me make sure I have enough time after school. I'm not sure I have. So again, I've been in this role for 2 years and I'm learning management, I'm learning governance. I just signed up for a training called Together Leader, Together Manager, Together Teammate. So I can learn how to be a good manager, how to be a good leader, and also how to be a good teammate, because I'm never a leader or someone's manager. I'm always working with someone. So I've just signed up for those 3 trainings and got confirmation just yesterday. So I'm in a stage of my career where my philosophy is growing, is being molded with everything that I'm learning. I pride myself of being a lifelong learner. I do not know everything, and I want people to tell me when I'm wrong. I want people to hold me accountable, so that when I create and when I manage, it's accepted and everyone's understanding where it's coming from, which is advocating for the equity for my students and for their uplifting of their success. So I would say my current philosophy right now is how I don't see people as I'm their manager. I see it like we're working together to create together, to uplift a population together. There's no one who's above or below. And maybe I'll learn something different in these next couple of months of taking these courses. And I hope I do, and I can answer that differently later. So my role, and I pride myself on this, is I'm always asking questions. I'm always asking, who, when, where, why? Why does it have to be this way? Why can't we ask for this? Where is this money going? Has it been spent? I'm always asking those questions. And one of the biggest things that get to me when people are, oh, it's always done this way, or you won't understand, or so my role I see as asking those questions and making us all think about, why is something done that way? Why hasn't it been looked at differently, et cetera? I want to make also deeper and more meaningful connections to our student body. What do they want? Are we working towards their goals, their career choices? So I believe that my role will be there to question and to always inquire about what can be done more than what is already being done.
Thank you. So we'll go on to question number 5. Per state law and board policy, the Peralta Community College District is required to engage in a process of participatory governance. This is a 4-part question. A, please explain your understanding of what this means and what you believe the board should do to solicit engagement from the PCCD community and also demonstrate accountability to your voting constituents. B, what in your view is the value of deep inclusion in decision-making, and when does this become problematic? C, provide an example of a time in a previous role that illustrates both the opportunities and the challenges inherent in this kind of inclusion-based decision-making, while also demonstrating your basic approach. Explain what you did and how you handled the situation. E, how would you balance the need for inclusive decision-making the challenges of varying and conflicting points of view and interests of different constituent groups, and the need for accountability.
So again, I just learned what participatory governance is. For my budget that I informed you guys about, I had to get a group of stakeholders, had to be 2 community partners. I'm not sure if I'm going to remember this correctly. 2 community partners, organization partners, 3 parents, 1 student, admin, and a teacher. And so we had to, I had to go and approach our stakeholders, let them know what this is about, what the responsibility is, how important this was for our community, as well as for them and their students. So I believe it is very important. I said I had a meeting today, and when she said, oh, well, we need to put the money here, I said, no, we need to ask the stakeholders where the money should be put. So I do definitely believe that soliciting engagement from our stakeholders to let them know that they are a huge part of this decision-making. A lot of people don't understand that. I believe that is very important to engage the Peralta Community College District community. And I believe gathering data from our community when we are voting for things would be helpful, and that would demonstrate to them that we are being held accountable because they're telling us what they need and require to succeed. So I definitely think having stakeholder engagement is super important, as well as data collection, to be able to hold ourselves accountable to our stakeholders as well as our PCCD community. I believe there's a deep, deep value in inclusion when there's decision making. Everyone needs to be included. It cannot work when it's top down. It just doesn't work. We've seen it time and time again. And this system is not built for that, for us to succeed when it is top down. So in my view, the value is great of having inclusion when there's decision making, and always having diversity in the room whenever there's any type of decision making. And it becomes problematic when there is no diversity and when there is no stakeholder engagement, as well as no community accountability or community data collection to keep us accountable. So I'm so sorry I said it earlier, and I know I have 4 minutes, but so again, today we were in the meeting and they told me, we're going to just do this money here. And I was like, I'm not going to sign this unless we discuss it with the stakeholders. But the deadline is whatever time. Yes. And that's why we have stakeholders to decide these questions. So it was a really challenging conversation to have, because someone is telling me, like, let's push it. And I'm reminding them that we have stakeholders that we're responsible and accountable to. It's great now, the need for inclusive decision-making. How will I balance it? The challenges of varying conflicting points of view. It's just great to communicate, always check in with people. When I have interviews where I am, my first question to the interviewee is like, how nervous are you right now? You don't need to be. We're just going to have a conversation. So always making sure you're checking in, because there will be varying and conflicting views, and we just need to respect each other, respect each other's experiences, respect each other's life challenges, career choices, just the entire person. We need to be able to come together as a collective to work towards the uplifting and success of East Bay's Peralta Community College District community.
Those are all of our questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to everyone who helped participate and who did participate and help put together this interview session. We would be now adjourning to closed session.
I don't think so.
I think so. It's on our agenda.
So,
Oh, of course.
Yes.
Yes,
That
sorry.
concludes.
that's why we have you.
Not at all. That concludes the interview portion of with the candidates.
Yes.
You have two options at this time, trustees. You can deliberate if you so choose. And you can come to a decision if that deliberation were to lead you that way. You also have the option not to deliberate at this time and to put this to the Tuesday meeting on February 28th. It is also agendized for that. According to your original timeline, you had February 28th dictated as the meeting on which you would make your determination and appointment. We have agendized tonight's meeting to also allow the board to take action if the board so chose. And you do have a closed session scheduled as well, so please
Yes,
do.
my apologies,
Keep
Docs.
that in mind because
you.
we do need your time for closed session after this.
Madam President, can
I-
we take a 2-minute break? Come back and then start talking about whether we're going to make the decision tonight. And my understanding is that deliberations must be made in public and a vote must be made in public.
That's
Is that
correct.
Yes, that was what I was gonna say also. The closed session has nothing to do with this process. It's to deal with the two items that are indicated on your agenda. One of them is an update on labor negotiations. And the other one is my evaluation and looking at operational issues as it relates to the board goals.
Yes, and I misspoke earlier. I apologize.
But if we could take a brain break, bio break right now, I think we'd all come back a little fresher to have the
Yes,
discussion.
thank you.
Does that work? Thank you.
I have a personal. I'll keep the private email. I don't want to influence the board.
I don't know why. I mean, maybe not roll. But you won't make it work. And so we do that. And that actually behind that.
All right. I think Paul is extremely strong candidate. And just like gold, like.
No.
Sorry, I've got stone on my hands.
And I wasn't just calling it most early on, I really do think this. Not you, not Jerry. But it wasn't done. There's no way to fire it there. But good works out. Brings better responsibility. Yeah, well, I'm not surprised about that. All right.
Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and begin our discussion. Who wants to go first?
Going to have the discussion.
So, I'm sorry, Natasha, do you want to talk about the parameters of
Absolutely.
next steps?
Thank you. Thank you so much, President Polk. So the process from here is that the board has an opportunity to deliberate regarding the candidates. The district's been very lucky to have a lot of interest and extraordinarily qualified candidates present themselves, and 4 of those candidates be interviewed by the board. At this juncture, the goal is for the board to be able to come to a consensus and select a candidate for the provisional appointment. I encourage you, board, in this process to share all of your positive ideas and comments that will help you move towards a consensus. And then at some point, you would require a trustee to make a motion on a candidate, receive a second, and then take a vote. Any other questions for me, trustees?
Just a couple questions logistically. So right now we're scheduled for the closed session at 4, and we're probably going to move that down to 5. So in the case that we are unable to, or are we not? So in the case that we are unable to complete our conversation or discussion and make a decision by the time we need to go to closed session, what happens in that scenario?
Yeah, it's at the discretion of the president. The president can choose to continue the deliberation tonight, or you can move the continuation of the deliberation and the decision to Tuesday's board meeting. You have both meetings agendized for deliberation and action on this topic. And so the organization of the meeting is typically left to the president.
So I guess my clarifying question, this would be maybe for the board president, but also for the discussion with this board is, do we want to have the discussion tonight? Do we want to have it on Tuesday in the off chance that we may need to stop and then continue the conversation on Tuesday? I don't know if it's better if the conversation remains fluid or if it's better to try to get it done tonight. So I don't know. I don't know if anybody knows, but
I'm less inclined to split the deliberation time personally, but I'd be interested to see what my colleagues think.
I personally, we listened to 4 people for 30 minutes per person. I took a lot of notes. I would like to review the notes. I would like to really truly understand, possibly even review the recording on YouTube or wherever it will be up next. Yeah, I think I would need a little bit of time.
Anybody else want to weigh in? Go ahead. Trustee Gonzalez.
I'm just listening. I mean, I can go either way.
I'm asking you to speak to the microphone and then I'm not doing it. So I didn't hear what you stated.
Oh, I'm fine either way.
I'm inclined to, if we are going to deliberate, then we need to make a decision. I am inclined not to split deliberation between tonight and Tuesday.
Typically, our board meetings are really packed. So I can't imagine we're going to have more time on Tuesday and a less pressured environment on Tuesday. And I'm a little worried that if we put it off, we're going to get a barrage of lobbying in between now and Tuesday. And I don't want that. I want us as a board to be able to work as colleagues to figure out what makes sense for this board. And so my preference is for us to spend the time right now to just kind of get some clarity. If at that point it becomes clear that we don't have enough information, that we really need to like kind of go back and review tapes or look at resumes, et cetera, I think we have an opportunity to do that. But I'm already seeing my email. I'm getting lobbied. And it's like, no, let me work with you all to come to a decision here. This is the decision we have to live with. Yeah. So that's my thought, but I don't want to be dogmatic about it. I'm trying to be collegial.
Bill, do you have anything to add?
I'm ready to go.
Okay. VP Quinlan?
Yep,
Okay, let's do it.
Yep.
Who would like to go first?
And again, just another clarifying question. So structurally, I know that you had said what you had said, Natasha, but should we just kind of go with each person or trustees and talk about all four? Should we go with each candidate and then each of us start to chime in on our thoughts about each candidate? And then when we take that vote or when we take a vote, what if it's I'm trying to think through all the possible scenarios and what do we do after that possible, you know how my mind works. So can you just help us out here?
Thank you. Yes.
There's no one way to do this, and so it really is at the discretion of the board. One of the ways that I have seen other boards do this is to begin the discussion around attributes of candidates that really resonated with each of you. So maybe name one or two of the candidates that is rising in your heart and mind, talk about those attributes, see how that resonates with other trustees, and then let the discussion flow from there.
Go ahead, Trustee Withrow.
My feeling in listening to the four and reading for their backgrounds and resumes, if you will, that Adrian Abuyan is by far the strongest candidate. Without going into any individual kind of thing, it's a broad-based sense that he's exceedingly qualified, exceedingly motivated, and I think would be a tremendous community-oriented trustee that would add to this body.
Thank you.
I'm not sure of the order, but I'm going to sit back and listen in as I would review the notes, as I mentioned earlier.
Great. Thank you.
I look for two things. Number one, a skill set that somebody can bring to the board. And number two, their understanding of the Peralta system, the finances, the issues we face. And really, Paulina Gonzalez Brito, I think has an incredible level of experience she can bring to our board. Addition to potential partners in the community. And then also she showed and demonstrated just based on not working in the system, a tremendous knowledge of the system and the issues facing us. The other candidates, I think Adrian's experience as a student trustee is valuable. And then I also feel that Danielle Alvarado, the work he's done in the community around the hackathons and the what is it, hack the community, and hack the hood, right? And so I think that was a really valuable experience to bring. It shows the type of initiative and organizing we actually need from the board in terms of engaging the community and bringing the community in there. And also his background in marketing, I think is really important, a skill set we really don't have in this board right now.
Maybe I'll follow that up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually talk about the highlights for each candidate. That's what I'll do. So I'll start with Adrian Abuyan. I do like the fact that he's a student and it's a student that he was a student and he was a very active student trustee. And I think that that is going to be part of the lens with which he will sit at this dais. And I think that that is really important. I do like the work in the community that he has certainly engaged in, because this is our community, and that is really wonderful that he's been doing that for so many years, as well as his familiarity with politics in general. Daniel Alvarado is our next person. His personality was really fantastic. I thought that was very cool. Even though cool is maybe not an eloquent word right now, but I thought it was. What I found interesting about him is that he knew more about budgets, and that surprised me a little bit. He was very specific in terms of his information. And as I was following his resume, he did have lots of different experience and, year and a half. So and he's young, which is great. But what I did find in two of them, both Heckelhood and Adobe, I think it was, is that he went very quickly from one position to a leadership position to another leadership position. So in a short period of time, he was promoted. And I thought that was really great to see. In terms of I can't believe I don't have her name. I'm so sorry. The last one. No.
Lydia, right here.
Oh, Nita, yes. I love that she was part of OUSD. I love that that's where her work is. I love that she is very interested in equity and uplifting. I really think that it's important for us to cultivate our partnerships with OUSD as well as Alameda Unified. And so that was really wonderful for me to see. But the person that did Paulina, now let me go to Paulina. The knowledge, the information, the understanding of the information that Paulina had was unique. And so it wasn't just research, which I'm glad that many of our candidates did do, but it wasn't just research. The research was triangulated with both the work of delving in and finding the information, understanding the information, but also bringing in her experience as a CEO. And the one thing that is also kind of interesting is that she is a CEO, so she understands a chancellor's conundrum, right? In terms of, so that was really interesting. But so those were my highlights for the 4 candidates that we had as a maybe start for the discussion.
Okay.
All right,
Mics are on, sorry.
let me try to take a go with this. First of all, I want to just acknowledge that putting your name forward into this process takes a lot of bravery. And then the 4 candidates who came forward and interviewed in public, gosh, that's gutsy and really, really admirable. So I want to just publicly acknowledge and thank everybody who put in an application, even the people who weren't in the area, to take the time to care about, consider stepping forward in leadership. And then the 4 people that we interviewed, that took a level of kind of courage that I really just admire quite a bit. I really liked Daniel Alvarado's personality. He did so much to just kind of make the room soft, make the room feel welcoming. And I could see that if he were on the board, he would play a sort of a bonding kind of community building role that if we appointed him, I think, that strength would make up for other deficits that areas of newness. And I think as you look at the 4 candidates, although he had a lot of experience at Laney in terms of the sort of the depth and breadth, I think he probably has the biggest area for growth in terms of really understanding the detailed challenges of being on this board. But I really liked him as a personality quite a bit. And, whatever happens, I hope that as a district, we stay in touch with him. Recruit him to the foundation board, et cetera. I think that's really good. Adrian Abuyan, I worked with, he sat next to me on this dais for the time that he was here. I know he was extremely hardworking. I drove him home after board meetings numerous times. And so I know Adrian really well. And I know that he would be a very hardworking trustee and bring in a specific skill set of kind of understanding the position of students in this district. And I think that's a real strength. Nita Khalil, I think, right off, the experience of being involved in the Oakland schools is absolutely critical. And like Daniel, I think, she's a keeper. She was obviously scared here, is a little nervous, and I'd be nervous in this sitting. And so, I was trying to just here, let me see what we've got going on here and see past the nerves. And there's a lot of strength. Her experience as a community board leader, the YWCA, working with communities that we don't have strong inroads in, particularly Arab Americans, would be a real strength on this board. And then a deep understanding of the Oakland schools and the bureaucracy of the schools. I really like that. I really liked that on the last question, she really just kept coming back to the idea of needing stakeholder involvement. And I think that one of the kind of crying needs in this district is somebody with that baseline philosophy, who can keep saying it over and over and over. Because no matter how much you say that, there's so much skepticism in this district that anybody actually really means that having a board member with that as a baseline value, I think would be a real strength. And then I come to Paulina, who, as Cindy said, is really unique. I have to say where I land is that she brings a skill set that is really sorely needed here. And the depth of understanding of some just baseline things is really critical. And as much as I don't mean this as let me not compare it. Let me not compare candidates, and let me just go to her for a second, because she said something about not being from Peralta. I mean, she's got a son in the district, which gives her a unique understanding. And as a parent, I get that. You care about your kids so much, and to find a home at Berkeley City College that is obviously really working for, a student who isn't, the obvious fast track to the 4 years, et cetera. That was important. But I think the thing that she said that really hit me was she's not an insider, but she's really seriously grounded in the community. And in some way, we have a lot of insiders on this board already. We've got 3 faculty members on this board. We've got inside knowledge on this board right now of that process. Having somebody as grounded in this community partnerships, 30 years of community investment work, and like that, as I think about our challenges in enrollment growth and outreach and community development and the promise that Peralta plays as an economic engine for this community that's never quite fulfilled, I think she plays just such a interesting, game-changing perspective that as I look at the four candidates and I say, yeah, all these people are very cool. You know, I'll use that word, Cindy. I think that Paulina brings something that we don't have. And so that's where I'm leaning right now. I'd love to know what my other colleagues are thinking though.
So the 6 minutes that I've had to review notes and then listen to others, I hear whatever everyone has said and pointed out the positive notes of the candidates. I will say I am stuck between two, which the two are Adrian and Paulina. And the difference is very clear. One is, well, not very clear for me. One has been working for 30 plus years, it's just as you just mentioned, Trustee Yuan, and understands, I guess, operations, technicalities, certain things that one would not know without that experience of being within sort of in an organization and leading or coming through the ranks and then leading. And on the other end, we have someone who sort of is from the inside. As you mentioned, we have some people already on the board from the inside. But this version is a student from the inside, and then student trustee who has gone through policy, but looked at it, has viewed it from the student lens. And since then has continued to go on through like sort of public policy, the public policy, the community-based and outreach sort of route, and has proven to show that they can bring up engagement and increase sort of numbers as far as rallying people together for a good cause. And due to our low enrollment and low engagement and low fill in the blank, I would say I would go with Adrian at this point, especially since we have someone on the board that I think has deep knowledge, Trustee Quinlan, from the instructor and staff member perspective. I would love that deep knowledge from the student perspective, and we can bridge those together. I think that would be really, really awesome to just sort of see how that works together, to understand, as he's the most closest to our students, I would say. Adrian is, and we have Trustee Quinlan, who's closest to the teacher experience. I think this would be beneficial to have Adrian on at this point.
Thank you, Shuey. I've thought a lot about this, as you all know, especially considering the fact that Trustee Jenkins, born and raised in Oakland, went through the Peralta system. That's a huge loss to this board to not have that perspective here. And in listening to the interviews today, you know, I pledged to everybody to keep an open mind. And I did so. I am so. Paulina comes from a similar nonprofit background that I do. I spent 7 years as an associate ED of a very community grassroots-based nonprofit in San Francisco. So I understand that perspective as well. It has been beneficial to me as a trustee. I think that that's been an experience that it's hard to understand that and to be in that CEO role, to speak to your point, Cindy, and understanding the conundrums that do come up for the CEO positions. But for me, I thought a lot about what my time was like as a student and what I wanted my trustees as a student to know about what my experience was as a student coming through the system. Again, having that perspective, it's a huge loss for us to not have Kevin here to provide that. And I think having a student trust, someone who was a student trustee, who went out, got his education, went out and worked really hard in the community, doing a variety of different things to serve the community here in Oakland. I think that's something that we tell our students to go do and to come back and serve in this capacity. And so I'm leaning towards Adrian, because I think that that's something that we do tell our students to do. And how can we say no at this point? to someone who wants to come back and serve in this capacity after they've gone out for training, education, et cetera. So that's where I'm leaning.
Thank you, trustees, for each sharing your current thoughts. The next step in the deliberative process would really be to see if you have reached a level of consensus around any one candidate. And you are so fortunate to have such exceptional candidates to even make this a difficult decision for the board. As I'm trying to gauge where you're at, it seems like you have really kind of narrowed it to two trustees, Adrian and Paulina, excuse me for using their first names. Trustee Reese, I wasn't exactly sure because you spoke to the positive attributes of all candidates. I wasn't sure if you had landed clearly on any one. And so maybe to go back through the trustees an additional time would be one of the ways of coming to a consensus.
Trustee Withrow, did you want to speak to what Natasha just said?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Can you repeat it, please, Natasha?
Sure. Trustees, we thought maybe you would want to go back through one time. You each had an opportunity to address the positive attributes that you felt for the candidates that were resonating with you the most. And of the two candidates, Paulina and Adrian, excuse me for using just their first names, but it seems like those were kind of coming to the top of the list. If you wanted to express your interest in any one candidate, that could be done going through the trustees again.
Okay, I think there were positive attributes of all of the candidates. And Paulina and Adrian seem to be the two that are here. I just feel very strongly across the whole spectrum of things, not looking at one single attribute or a collection of attributes, but overall, that Adrian is by far the strongest candidate. And I think he would do an outstanding job as a member of this body, very committed, short-term, long-term. And he's somebody that I think will listen and pursue what he envisions is best for the community, certainly student success. So I feel very strongly that Adrian is the one that I will vote for.
Thank you. Trustee Johannes?
Similar to what I just mentioned a bit ago, I think the close relation to students and having been a student not too long ago, Adrian is very aware of the needs and wants, and the whole point of this is to be very student-centric. We need our students to continue to get an education to build our community together. And with that, again, I'm leaning towards Adrian.
Thank you, Trustee. Trustee Gonzalez-Yuan.
President Polk, may I make a point of order real quick?
Please go ahead.
I just want to make note that student trustee Hogan has also stated that she feels Adrian would be the best person for this role. I know that you guys aren't on Zoom and can't see your comments, so I thought I'd make sure it was noted.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
I don't think I have anything more to add at this time.
I'll just say that I also came to this with an open mind, and I looked through all of the different individuals, and I studied, and I didn't talk to anyone because I knew that many of the candidates were calling, but that's not the way that I work. And so I spoke to none of the candidates at all, but I did go through much of their information, much of their documents. And I thought that I was going to land with Adrian and one other person actually. But surprisingly, after hearing Paulina today, and hearing not only how she spoke, but the depth and breadth of knowledge. And interestingly, again, it was, yes, declining enrollment, yes, our budgets, and then also OPEB. Just there were so many things that she continued to say that that surprised me and surprised me and surprised me. So I still land, or not, I actually, interestingly, I land with Paulina, which is not where I thought I was going to land at all.
I'm putting my strong support behind Adrian.
I still support Paulina Gonzalez Brito.
So we're in an interesting place, trustees, where it sounds like we have, you seem to be rather split. At this point, you could continue to discuss this and see if you could convince one of your colleagues to support a different candidate than they've stated so far. You could go through the motion process if you'd like, or you could continue the deliberation to the next meeting, or defer till Tuesday.
Thank you. Should we deadlock on this decision? The default, as I understand it, is that we go to an election
That's correct.
and then we let the voters decide, but the cost of that's about $250,000.
I believe that is probably an accurate cost. I was able to speak with the Registrar of Voters office, and they confirmed that for a special independent election, the cost is $18 to $21 per voter. I don't know the exact number of registered voters for Trustee Area 2, but it would default. So just to be, the process actually falls back to the County Office of Education. And so then the superintendent of the county would call for the special election paid for by Peralta. So it is quite like, is it $250,000? Is it a bit more? I'm not exactly sure, but it is a you know, $250,000 plus or minus. Yes.
All right, thank you.
That Peralta pays for.
Yes, this is Peralta paid for. Yes.
And just to kind of put it out there for the board members, we're deliberating on two individuals. We're split, but point in fact, if we actually had a special election, these two individuals might not even be in the running.
That's correct.
So it's kind of, so the irony of it, which says to me that we should figure this out for two different reasons. If we are really this kind of acrimoniously split, and one wonders, are we really? And then number two, it just is ridiculous for us to even think or conceive of spending that much money. We can't be that entrenched with one or the other that much.
All right.
Are we motioning to make a decision? Are we motioning to?
I'm taking everybody's temperature before. So where are we landing? Where are we landing with, do we want to come back on Tuesday? Because we're tied here. So do we want to continue to deliberate?
Are there absolutely, and again, please take me back if I shouldn't go in this direction, but we talked about what we liked about the candidates that we are split on. Are there particular characteristics and or things that we are no-goes for us for the candidates that we have not inclined ourselves to? I guess my real question is there anything about either of these two candidates that we couldn't work with? And that may just be a question that's out in the clouds that is not answered. But if we can't make a decision today and this ends up being Tuesday, I think we really need to think about that because if we can work with either of them, it's kind of silly that we get to this particular point. Sorry, I have to pick my earring. It's okay.
So what's our next step, legal counsel?
Trustees, it really is a matter of like deliberation to reach consensus. Yeah, it would be, it would be a loss of tremendous funds and resources of the district, not
I think
for
we
this
all can
board
agree
not
that
to
that's the case.
reach
Yeah.
a decision. So,
We can't go there.
so go for it. Advocate, convince your teammates. You can do this.
All right, I'm gonna make a stab at this and again, I'm really resisting the going negative.
Right, and don't go there.
I really want to resist the going negative. I think that doesn't help us as a board. It introduces acrimony. And by the way, keep in mind, if you go negative and then your candidate, the person you just trashed, is appointed, like, let's not do that, please.
Mean to trash.
I'm just saying, we've got an awkward, difficult position. So I'm gonna just try to be positive here about candidates that I like. And here's kind of where I go here. People, we're stuck as a district. We have been in declining enrollment for 10 years, really, for 10 years. It wasn't just the pandemic. It's that we aren't doing something that taps into the incredible potential in this district. I think that Paulina brings a different voice, just a completely different way of thinking about this institution as an engine of community growth. We know there are thousands of students out there. We need somebody who will help us re-envision what we're doing and how we're doing it. As much as I like Adrian, I think he brings experience of what we've been doing, which is great. And it certainly brings a student perspective, but it's not that game-changing voice that I think Paulina brings. And so I'm asking us to re-envision the kind of the energy that we have as a board, and then think, well, what would it mean to have somebody with that deep level of a community investment, and not just the perspective, but really hardcore success. We talk about community partnerships. She's working with a statewide coalition of 160 organizations. Who among us does that? Nobody. Nobody in this district does that. I think that's game changing. So, I just think there's something different here, and there are all those other strengths that she brings, and my guess is that the chancellor, if she had a voice in this, one of the things that she would say is,
Speaking for the chancellor now.
I'm just saying, from the perspective of a chancellor, having somebody who really understands what it means to report to a board and the challenges that reporting to a board, a diverse board, what that experience is. I mean, there's so many other things, but I'll just come back. I'm going to stop because I think I want to land back on this, like, rethink who we are, people. And I think she can help us do that.
I would add, and that makes a lot of sense, 100%. I would add, just on the flip, just the note that you made regarding he was part of what we did do, what the past was. And I think in the interview, he very much so, Adrian stated that he did with, I don't know how to say it apart from Army speak, boots on the ground in the field, ensuring that there was Wi-Fi in public locations on campus, ensuring that the security system worked regarding the blue phones. I think because he has his ear closer to the students, that knowledge can be brought to the board where we can agenda item. put items on the agenda, agendize items to ensure that students' needs are being met, because the whole point is to educate the students. But if they're not comfortable, if they're not safe, if they're not able to access their, Canvas or the system, LMS system, what is even the point? And I think because of that connection and probably continued connections that Adrian has with the student body, as he said, he was a founder of one of the committees. I have to look through my notes again. I think he would be a great asset to really help us really focus. I understand that there's budgetary issues, and we do need someone who is close to that. But at the same time, we can't be as operational. I still want to ensure to understand what the actual needs of the students are, so we can implement policies or create policies surrounding that.
Yep, I would agree with you, and I'll piggyback off what you're saying, Trustee Johannes. We talk a lot on this dais about the missing voice of the student, and that we have a huge opportunity here to have a trustee who has that voice, who understands what the student perspective is. I'll speak for myself. I haven't been in community college for almost 20 years. That's a long time. And what we need is someone who has a direct connection to the campus, to the community, who understands the basic needs, like having Wi-Fi in public spaces and making sure that the blue phones work, making sure that we have heating in our classrooms. These are all things that we are very much aware of, but to hear it from the perspective of someone who went through that system, that's invaluable to this district. And that's a voice that we lost with Trustee Jenkins. I feel the more I listen and the more I mediate or meditate on this, I just feel so strongly that it's telling the community that our students, that what would it tell, let me frame it in a different way. What would it say to the community if we said no? That a former student trustee who wants to come back and serve this district and do a good job and take the training that he took from this district, went out, got additional training, again, in education. What does it say that we say no to having them come back and serve their community exactly this is exactly what we tell our student trustees to do. I feel incredibly strongly that Adrian would be a huge asset to this board.
Can students speak?
Go ahead, student trustee Hogan.
After listening to all four of the candidates, I strongly feel that Adrian, being a former trustee, taking the role of a former trustee's seat would be the best thing from a student aspect. I know that from what Nikki said, that you want something new, you have someone already that's on the board that has an inside perspective, but the student perspective is what you should value most, because it would send a really negative message to me as a student trustee if I were to go out and finish my educational goals and try to come back as a regular trustee. How would my trusteeship not help? That I feel that would be something that should be able to help me be able to continue to serve the community that I come from. So really, I don't see why he is not being considered, because he feels, to me, it seems like he's showing the best support for the students, which should be the #1 objective. Thank you.
Thank you, student trustee Hogan. VP Quinlan?
So I agree the student voice is important. What I think is also important is we have a community voice we need to listen to also. We have people that have voted over the last 20 years, $1.16 billion in support in bonds and are paying for those bonds. We have people that have voted over the last, 10 years, $8 million a year in parcel taxes for this district. And right now, I don't think, based just on our enrollment, we're not doing enough to engage that community to come to this college. We're losing the people to Chabot, we're losing people to DVC, and we need to figure out why. And I think it's, we're not fully engaged in this community. And I think that that we need to pay attention to that. Why are we so under enrolled when we have so much need in this community for education and for what we have to offer?
I think
But
that,
be-
go ahead, student.
Go ahead, student trustee Hogan.
well, being a current student at Merritt College, and I have been a former student. I've graduated from the Peralta Community College District. And sometimes you have to look at the faculty and to ask the faculty, what are the faculty doing, the teachers doing to engage with the students? Are the teachers doing everything within their power to make sure that the students stay engaged and recruit people and send other students that are coming up in the community to the schools? Are they doing everything within their power to do that, to make sure that that happens? And being a student, from my perspective, that's not happening. Not all of the students at Peralta College come from a demographic that vote. So we can't always gauge what's needed in the community colleges according to what the votes are saying, because a lot of our students are low income and they don't go out to vote. They don't even know what the practical, what the Board of Trustees does half the time. So having someone from a student perspective, I circle back to say that that is a big asset to have and to be able to consider when picking someone for this role.
Thank you, student trustee Hogan. Excellent point. I think it's a little unfair to reframe the discussion in what would the community feel if we said no to our student trustee, because I think that this very discussion is about two individuals that are, and two voices that are very, very important to us out of however many original candidates there were. And you have a student trustee whose voice is clearly incredibly important to us, and also a community voice who also has had 40, I don't know how many years, decades out in the community. So that's pretty amazing that we're looking at these two individuals, a student voice and a community voice. So I think it's a little unfair to go ahead and say, what would the community say that we're saying no to a student trustee? Because point in fact, we're actually saying maybe yes to a student trustee. And student trustee Hogan, I would love to see you come back and, and become a trustee too here as well. So we are not saying no, we're actually inviting and embracing. At this particular point, at this particular time, and we have a year and a half, I don't know how long the term is, there's going to be another election coming forward. And I think at this point, maybe for me, what rang true was when Paulina had talked about different constituent voices. I think what I find also interesting, in addition to her depth and breadth of knowledge, her understanding about the fact that the chancellor and the board, we have lots of people wanting many different things, constituents, stakeholders. That's so important, incredibly important. But there's a reality that she understood, which rang true for me. And that reality is it as easy or as much as stakeholders and constituents want something to be done, there are reasons why and limitations on both finances and time that she understands clearly. And I think that for me was really important because, to be clear, this board, all boards within the community college system, there's lots of issues, problems, concerns there. And so when you have somebody that gets that, understands that, and is a community person, but also is a person who's a CEO that works with the board and understands the struggle with, yes, these are all the things that everybody wants and they're important, but there are limitations and restrictions and yada, yada, yada. That is a level of knowledge that is a level of experience and knowledge that I find important and illuminating and interesting.
Madam President, I suggest we are deadlocked at this time.
We are.
And I suggest that we adjourn and pick up this discussion on Tuesday, because I don't see anybody moving. And so I think our time would be better spent in closed session, dealing with whatever it is we have to deal with in closed session, and then reflecting. And I fully expect I'm going to be bombarded with 1,000 emails and phone calls and texts.
Well, the other thing is that we can call for a motion now and see where we are after that.
If you think that there's productivity in such a motion, I don't object. I don't see anybody moving here right now. And so I think that's futile, but maybe I'm wrong. You're the president.
Cindy? Let's call a motion. Do we want to start with Paulina? Let's hear entertaining a motion.
I move that we approve Paulina Gonzalez Brito as trustee 2 area 2 trustee.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Sasha, could you please do the roll call, including the student trustees advisory vote?
Yes, ma'am. Student trustee Hogan,
No.
student trustee Latino. Absent. Trustee Withrow,
Yes.
trustee Johannes,
No.
trustee Gonzalez Ewan,
Yes.
trustee Napoli Bellarice,
Yes.
trustee Quinlan,
Yes.
trustee Delphine Polk.
No.
1, 2, 3, 4. It's 4-3 with 1 absent.
Well, sorry, Sasha, the student trustees vote is an advisory vote, and I think you did have 4-2 on
Yes.
of the trustees. But can I confirm, because trustee Withrow's comments were so strong, I just wanted.
I want to make
confirm
sure that
that
we,
he
yeah,
understood
please,
the
thank you, Natasha.
motion. I think. Trustee Withrow, the motion that was just considered was a motion to appoint Miss Paulina Gonzalez Brito as the trustee, and you voted in the affirmative. Is that your intention?
My part is, it's a negative,
You were voting in. the negative.
absolute negative. I
Thanks.
thought it was a different motion. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
that's okay. Thank you. So we are at a tie vote then.
Yes,
Thank you, Sasha.
no problem.
Okay.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Student trustee Hogan,
Oh,
What was I didn't hear what the motion was.
to adjourn the meeting.
Yes.
It's to adjourn this portion, the discussion on the trustee appointment. We do have a closed session.
Oh, my apologies. Thank you.
Thank you for
Yes.
clarification, council.
Student trustee Latino, absent. Trustee Withrow,
You know, what am I voting on?
Natasha, I don't think we need to vote to adjourn, do we?
Right, so I think if you don't mind, trustee Gonzalez, I'm just interpreting what the motion that trustee Gonzalez is intending to pause the discussion at this time to continue the discussion for Tuesday's meeting. So really what you're voting on, if you vote yes, you're saying, let's stop the conversation for now, and we will start again on Tuesday. If you vote no, then you're voting that you want to continue the discussion now and try to come to a consensus.
No.
Thank you, trustee Hogan. Trustee Withrow, could you repeat your vote?
I want to adjourn.
trustee Johannes,
Yes.
trustee Gonzalez Ewan,
Yes.
trustee Napoli Bellarice,
yes.
trustee Quinlan,
Yes.
trustee Delphine Polk.
Yes.
Thank you, trustees.
And,
At this time, the board will adjourn to
We're
closed session.
adjourning to closed session. Thank you.
Right.
and just so to clarify, Brown Act rules prohibit us from ex parte discussion, correct?
Uh,
Discussion of this item.
Thank you, trustee Gonzalez.
Can you
And
clarify
Let me,
our Brown Act rules here?
thank you, especially since we have new trustees and this is going to be a difficult topic. So what the Brown Act requires is that trustees deliberate only in public on this item. So you should not be having conversations with other trustees about this topic. All that you have to say, you should come back on Tuesday and say it from the dais and convince each other of which candidate should be selected for the trusteeship here in the public's view. Any questions from trustees about that? Okay, thank you. And just for the confidence of the public, the items that the trustees have in closed session are completely and 100% unrelated to anything related to this item. They are agendized closed session items. If we do have any public speakers that would like to address the board prior to closed session, you are welcome to do that now. Seeing no speakers, we'll adjourn the public session and go into, please, Vice President Quinlan.
So my question is, when do we report out on the closed session at the next meeting?
We won't, there's no actionable items. The administration needs to brief the board on closed session matters, but there's no reportable actions anticipated for closed session. Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Trustee Hogan, for participating.